We got to try each one.
Okay, we're gonna, our
Way too
budget hearing is officially ended. We are going to go ahead with our regular meeting, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chris Abel.
Here.
Vince Hansen.
Here.
Matthew Phipps.
Present.
Stacy Seldner.
Here.
Matthew Spalding.
Here.
Carrie Trask. Tony Vostelka.
Here.
Okay, we're going to open for public input. We have many people that want to speak tonight, so we're going to put it down to 3 minutes. Most of you know I hate cutting people off, so we're not going to have a little thing, you know, I'll just put my hand up just so you kind of know where you're at. But a lot of times, some people are shorter than others, so, but we'd like to get through these as quickly as we can. So I'll just put a little hand up, you know, just try to wrap it up in that time if you can. Our first guest is Braden Meyer. If you'd come up to the podium.
My name is Braden Meyer. Looking into the past year up to today, this board has been busy. There has been structural change, program review and implementation, new staff, and so much else. It's important to have these accomplishments of the board recognized, as well as the qualities and actions of each individual on this board. To start off, I want to go around this board and explain something I appreciate from each of you. Chris, you are and have been a person who is easy to get along with and talk to, a quality which I appreciate. Paul, when the Ad Hoc Student Behavior Advisory Committee held its meetings, you came to a couple of them. In one, I agreed with your suggestion of adding the use of artificial intelligence to the Lincoln Handbook. That is an emerging topic which is important to have a policy on, of which there is now. Thank you. Stacy, as the president of the Board of Education, you put in an unprecedented amount of work. That shows an unwavering respect to steer our district in the right direction. Matthew Spalding, you made sure that people's concerns were heard about the state's funding situation up here. By going down to Madison to be everyone's voice, you have done something which shows your utmost passion for this district. Tony, it is important that a board has a treasurer, and you decided to take that position. By being a business owner, you have expertise in this field, which has and will continue to help the board maintain fiscal responsibility. Kerry is not here today, but he was on June 9th. That was a special day for many families. That day, a plethora of students graduated from high school, a once-in-a-lifetime moment. When I walked across the stage, he was the one who handed me my diploma. I appreciate that deeply. Matthew Phipps, you are a down-to-earth, relatable person. When someone with those attributes serves publicly, that is a benefit to the whole community. Now, I would like to highlight some of the accomplishments the whole board has made. When the search for a new superintendent began, it did not take long until one was found in a timely manner. The current superintendent has shown that he is well qualified for this position. There has been a vast amount of transparency, which has been clearly shown by everyone here. Anyone can ask all of you a question about any topic and can receive a response quickly. Materials are constantly provided, whether they be physical or digital, about the activities of this board and this district. The community can really be engaged this way. There has been new policy implemented which departs the classroom from verbal and visual leanings on certain topics. By doing this, a great step has been taken to ensure students receive an ethical education. Also in the classrooms, the new Success for All reading curriculum is a great reform to help bump up the district from 30% of students at grade level. The curriculum maintains consistency and allows teachers to have fun in the way they teach. It was great to hear that 26 of 27 teachers who attended SFA training felt confident in it. From what it looks like, the teachers who have taught it so far have had a great time. If they feel confident in it, then so should the rest of the community. The Jefferson Playground project was a terrific renovation. All right, no more puns. This new field gives students a fresh experience to have a wonderful time with their friends. I'm glad I was there for the ribbon cutting ceremony. That was a great day. To fund that playground, among many other aspects of this district, a successful referendum was brought up. That referendum has allowed many functions to continue operating. Being debt-free is a great accomplishment we don't hear much in the government. Along with that, that referendum has allowed many great teachers to be kept and added. A lot are applying to work in our district and are coming back. If I had the qualifications to be a teacher, I would definitely want to work here.
That's 4.5 minutes.
Right?
I already raised my hand.
Okay, well.
Those are just some of the great accomplishments this board has championed. All these accomplishments make me excited to see what this board accomplishes next. By working together, it has been shown that prosperity is possible. I and other members of the community will be behind what's next. Thank you.
Our next guest is Michelle Ducho. Our next guest is Amy Russell.
My name is Amy Russell. I find Superintendent File's decision-making skills, along with his ability to clearly communicate reasons for those decisions, extremely questionable. He has fumbled relentlessly while attempting to explain his decision for declining the CEP program this year. The CEP funds are not taking away from people, nor are they raising local taxes by using them. These are federal funds that are there for districts with high poverty rates to use to feed every child in the district. He believes that it is more ethical to turn down these funds than to have the ability to feed every child in the district. I think there should have been more discussion with the board surrounding the decision on whether to decline CEP for the school year. It was a failure on the superintendent's part to not explain the reason for declining it to the board. Was the board aware of the specifics surrounding the reason we were going back to the model before COVID? Or did you assume it was just the end of a program that had run its course? What kind of person decides unilaterally to not feed every child in a school district if given the opportunity? Superintendent File is the epitome of a failure of leadership.
Stacy Eck.
My name is Stacy Eck, and I'm here to discuss Superintendent File's unilateral decision to remove Manitowoc from the CEP program. The history of the CEP program in Manitowoc, per the DPI, includes Jefferson being enrolled in 2018-19 and 19-20. During the COVID years, all schools used a variety of different relief funds for school breakfast and lunch. In June of 2022, the board unanimously voted to enroll all of MPSD in the CEP program. This includes all of the board members present today, except for Chris and Biff, who were not part of the board at the time. Mr. File took it upon himself to remove the district from the program completely without consulting the DPI for financial implications to the district or local food pantries to see how this would impact them if the schools no longer provided free breakfast and lunch. Since his decision has made the news, Superintendent File has been interviewed multiple times, and each time his narrative as to why he withdrew from CEP has changed. On September 12th, on the Be My Guest radio show, he said, if we start taking away taxpayer money for CEP, we may not have money to pay our teachers. On October 2nd, to WFRV Channel 5, he said, putting the funding from free lunches into other services like special needs programs will go a long way. There is some minimal truth to these statements. However, these would not be the consequences that would occur this school year if we had continued with CEP. Fund 50, which is a fund that's specifically for food services in the district, would primarily fund CEP, and those funds cannot be moved around to other areas. At some point, if we lacked funds in this area, money may need to be pulled from Fund 10 to cover the difference. Fund 10 is a general operations fund, but of course, Superintendent File did not give any explanation to this in any interview he has given. The theme he has continued to state time and time again is that it is not right to take money when it's not really needed, that you have to separate out needs and wants in the district. I find the fact that you are holding children's basic needs hostage against taxpayer money an embarrassment to our district. Taxpayers aren't getting a break by you opting out of CEP. In fact, now every taxpayer in Manitowoc will know that their tax dollars that automatically go into the CEP federal fund will not benefit their own community thanks to you. Our federal tax dollars are also funding Social Security and Medicare. So do you plan on opting out of those programs for yourself if you don't agree with taking federal money? We have over 50% of our student population that already qualifies for free and reduced lunch. But how many more do not technically qualify but are struggling immensely to feed their families? You are punishing children for something they have no control over, their meal account balance and their parents' financial situation. At the federal level, the economic security programs make up 8% or $522 billion of the federal budget in 2023. This is what supports programs like CEP. After speaking to the DPI, a few things were brought to my attention. First, no one contacted them until last week to discuss CEP. There was no communication prior to the withdrawal from the program. We are also the only district in the state that voluntarily withdrew from the program. There are ways that CEP can be used at select schools that demonstrate a higher need, which therefore would allow for a higher reimbursement rate to our district for utilizing the program. The DPI is willing to help work through many scenarios to determine which is the best fit for our district if financial viability is the concern. The need is there whether you want to admit it or not. To the board, you have allowed your superintendent to make an extremely careless decision for our district without your input. You all actually voted for this program last year. Stand by that vote and don't make it political. His decision is having a ripple effect across our community. You should be ashamed and embarrassed by this. Superintendent File, you stated that taking taxpayer money for CEP was disingenuous. What I find disingenuous is using my taxpayer money to pay your salary when I question how much you actually care about the district.
Our next guest is Barbara Post.
Graduated in Barbara Post. I live in Manitowoc. I've been here forever. Not that I chose to be here forever, but here I am. God sent me here today because I talked to kids on the street, and I graduated with Biff Hansen and Deborah Daly Knox. And I also graduated with Biff from Silver Lake College with a degree in home ec in 1978. Never recognized for that in Manitowoc Public School District ever. I came in as a reading aide, and I was in there 5 years, and a new administrator came in and demoted me to special needs. And I didn't even know what special needs were. And I did my best job. I was doing bathrooming, feeding, everything possible to help these kids, okay? And I just found out because, as you know, in 2019, I quit retired. I did it on the day that Kate Bilkey goes, "Are you here to do the timeout room?" And I told her no, because the only thing I was told that I would always be in BD or CWD, even if I had a degree. And I worked hard to get a degree. And I don't think that was fair to me ever. And there's a lot of people I talk to on the street and they think I did such a great job. And I did try when I came. First job elimination. I went through 3 job eliminations and I only stayed here because my husband worked at Manitowoc Company and he got laid off in 1981. If you knew what 81 came and you were pregnant with your first child and wondering how are you going to bring up that baby? And there were no jobs in Manitowoc. My husband was working everywhere possible. And if you talk to anybody in 1980, you will be confirmed with that. So we had our baby. My husband was working out of Appleton. He worked at Kelvinator everywhere. Okay, I know I go because it's 25 years. So I didn't want to live in Manitowoc, but I did. So in we had 2 babies. My second baby came when he was working at Kelvinator. They put her down as a disease because then she would be covered because we didn't have any insurance. So in 1992, when my husband was laid off again, I said, well, I have this degree and maybe I could go be a reading aide. And I had been at Monroe volunteering. Nobody knew I had a degree because who's going to tell you? You're not going to tell people you have a degree because they'll go, well, why are you staying here? So I went down, I got that. I got my first job elimination, like I said, and I got demoted to special needs. I spent, I don't know how long I was in special needs, but I only took a 3-hour job because it wasn't my cup of tea. It wasn't, I didn't want to be a nurse parole person. So then the second job elimination came when they decided to get rid of all the paras. I think that was 1998. And I was working in the library at the time at a 6.5-hour job and I got sent to MCCS. I didn't even know what it was, but everybody goes, Post, you can't go there. And I didn't even know what it was. It was Keogh, 2 Rivers, Manitowoc, and Valders, all in this room above McKinley Academy. Nobody knew it was a secluded room. So I went there and I worked with the lady I displaced. That was very hard because she was mad at me because I took her job. I only went there because my daughter needed to have insurance. So I decided, and I got injured there the second year because they sent in a new para to take that other lady's place. So then I decided at that time, if I went through a 3rd job elimination, I would just be out of there. So when they came up and said that our jobs were being eliminated in 2018, I thought, this is it. I'm just gonna be done. And that's what I did. So that's my story. And I talked to other paras, and I am not alone in this because I did some investigating and they all agreed because I did a lot of math. I did CPM math up to 8th grade. I did that algebra forever. And then we did this goofy math where they didn't have a curriculum. So they came up with this partial packet or whatever, and nobody knew what it was all about. And it was really hard. And that's my story, and that's how I came to be here tonight. And I'm hoping that other people, if there's parents out there and they have 4 people that have special needs kids, that they make sure that those special needs kids are being taken care of. Because when I came into, after I got off that charter school, I came into the district and I couldn't believe what was happening in the elementary schools. Because I had come from Riverview and I knew how protocol was. And when I was at charter school, they had the Wisconsin protocol update, and you could not do seclusion, you could not put them in a room. And when I got to elementary school, there were so many infractions, and I didn't put them all down on paper because it was happening all the time. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Paula Mastram.
Good evening, MPS school board members. My name is Paula Mostram. I'm the parent of a recent Lincoln graduate and a current sophomore I'm here to express my concern with Mr. File ending CEP meal service. He thinks the only reason for using this program was out of convenience. I am curious if when Mr. File didn't know if it was beneficial, his words, if he did any research. Did he talk to the homeless shelters, the Domestic Violence Center in Courage, social services, Grow It Forward, a HUD representative, the Learning Center at the Southfield Townhouses? Did he talk to the lunch staff, school admin, or teachers? And did he talk to you, the board? Superintendent, your job is not to teach parents responsibility. You have other lives to focus on, the children. Have you thought about all the possible reasons a child may need free lunch? You're out of touch and living in a dream world, thinking that the only barrier for children who need the free food and accessing it is because there are some irresponsible parents. There are families missing the cutoff line. There are low-income parents who don't have cell phones, computers, or internet access to the forums. There are children being raised by grandparents who may not understand the process. There's a mom who just entered Encourage to escape domestic violence and now is also trying to keep her location a secret. There are children physically and sexually abused by family, and the child is supposed to hope their parent fills out a lunch form. There are non-English speaking families. There are parents with addictions and older children taking care of younger siblings. How are they supposed to get their parents' financial information? There's a parent out there who may have just been diagnosed with cancer and technically can still pay for lunch, but every little bit helps. And maybe she's just too tired from chemo that day to worry about lunch, and it's a blessing. And yes, there are unfortunately just bad parents out there that whether they can afford lunch or not, are not taking the steps to complete an application. I know I'm not alone when I say I don't care what the reason is that this child is using free lunch. I don't care if my tax dollars are feeding all kids. I'm just glad a kid who needed food today is getting some. You are not teaching the parents a lesson on being responsible. You are only hurting the children more, both physically with hunger and mentally making them feel that nobody cares about them. That free lunch may have been the only highlight of their day, and it was taken away without any regard to the ramifications. This change had to be very confusing to students who last year went through the line and got free food, and it is now literally getting taken away and thrown in a garbage can. Not only in front of them, but all their classmates. Can you imagine the mental impact of that moment to the child? And who's paying for the food going in the garbage can? How do you think the lunch staff feels at the end of the day? How do you think the students who do have food witnessing this daily feel? How is this experience and hungry stomachs helping test scores and reading programs? You want success for all, start with food for all. I know some of you school board members lean on your religious views when disputing other issues. Whether I agree with that or not, I ask you to pull your Bibles out now and see what it tells you about feeding the hungry.
Yep.
I don't remember the part where the crowds were told to throw them a corn before they got any bread or fish. Mr. File's actions were deplorable and ignorant. His decision-making process should be questioned, your procedure policies should be looked at, and this mistake should be corrected. Oh, Ebenezer Scrooge, this boy is ignorance, this girl is want. Beware of them both, but most of all, beware this boy. I see doom unless the writing be erased. Thank you.
That I agree with her because that is exactly how it was viewed back then also.
Our next guest is Marilyn Wire.
The federal program called the Community Eligibility Provision, or CEP, was initiated in the 22-23 school year during and toward the end of the COVID scare. In June of 23, the CEP was ended. How did we feed the children of economically disadvantaged families before the pandemic? We had and still have food assistance programs that provide free and reduced priced meals, like the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program for those in need. According to the USDA, approximately 42% of students in the MPSD automatically qualify for free meals because of their family's enrollment in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, their own enrollment in Medicaid, or their status as a migrant or foster child. No child in need of help is left out.
That's not
For if 42% of families need this program, then 58% of families may need little or no help in paying for their own child's meals. Why should our tax dollars be spent on a CEP when there is no need? And remember this, federal money comes from all taxpayers. It is not free. Children from families with low income or at below 30% of the federal poverty level are eligible for free meals. Those with incomes of 130 to 185% of the federal poverty level are eligible for reduced price meals. Schools cannot charge children more than 40 cents for a reduced price meal. All that is required for parents who need financial assistance for their students' meals is to fill out an application supplied and set up at the beginning of the school year. More information is on the MPSD website, manitowocpublicschools.org. Applications are also available in the main office at the school. A teacher recognizing a school's need can have the school principal get the child help enrolled in the food plan if he or she was missed.
Address the board.
I am.
No, you're not.
Actually,
And for you,
Please allow to continue.
there is absolutely no stigma to any parent or child when signing up. A student's food account is tied to their student ID card and looks exactly like anyone else's card. Our country is going to continue to deteriorate if it becomes a free for everyone and a free for everything country. When most can afford and take care of themselves. This is a dangerous road to follow, and pretty soon the gratifying spirit of being able to provide for ourselves and the pride of our accomplishments will be gone, along with the freedom to do so. Why work hard when you don't have to, or even work at all? Everyone will have sole dependence on the government for everything. We will become wards of the powerful in Washington. We will lose our ability to be free. I put my full support behind Superintendent Field and his decision to be a responsible caretaker of our tax dollars. He's doing a great job. And the voice of common sense in this world of continual takers and crybabies.
Wow. Babies.
So I'm gonna, you guys recognize that when the first few talkers were up there, there was no heckling?
There was no name calling either.
I would appreciate,
Why is she talking to us?
Yeah.
I would appreciate if that stops, otherwise I will clear the room.
The name calling needs to stop.
Is that understood by everyone?
The name calling needs to stop.
Is that understood by everyone?
You guys understand that too?
Okay, our next speaker is Jean Wire.
That's fine.
First of all, we're all in this together. We really are. Okay, so here's what I would like. I would like life to be like it was before COVID. That's what I would like. I would like to go back to the same kinds of lifestyle that I had before COVID. I would love that. But I am concerned about, and these are going to be real short, just a few thoughts, okay? One, currently it's food for all, okay? That's what people are talking about, okay? And that's what you've heard, okay? Next year, it could be Nikes for all, new Nikes. Maybe the year after that, maybe we're doing cell phones for all. I'm not so sure that's the right thing. Second thing, third thing, I guess, who's really complaining about this? Is it the affected people? I'm not so sure that that's the deal. I wish the federal government would actually run like the superintendent currently is running things. He's asking for the money that he needs, and he's not asking for more. Eventually, this government is going to run out of other people's money. That's eventually what's going to happen. The job of the school is to teach and to make sure that students can contribute so that they can get a job and it's not free food for everyone.
Our next speaker is Dawn Erdman.
Good evening. Social media is an interesting creature. Thanks to it, I heard there's a group on Facebook that didn't believe the book, The Haters, that I read portions to you last month was in Lincoln Library. Well, they're partially correct. Let me set the record straight. It's lost. But it was chosen. I'm not sure how those decisions are made. I would guess paid for by taxpayers' money at one point in time. I will provide you with the printout of the proof when I'm done. Another curious thing about social media, and I know we all have done and said things we regret. I'm happy it didn't exist when I was young, but comments, and I might paraphrase a bit, made during an open mic prior to a meeting are, well, you know the base. It's all the way. You know being indignant and morally superior to everybody else is a problem. Let's take care of it, but don't make up problems. I want this board and anyone else listening to know I don't make up things. Do the research yourself. I'd rather spend my time doing something else, but feel compelled. Not because I'm indignant or morally superior. I definitely am far from that status. I just want impressionable, possibly confused, innocent minds to be given the opportunity to grow morally. The minor's brain is not fully developed, and desensitizing them with inappropriate age material may lead to prematurely sexualizing a child. The inappropriate age materials will also lead to early experimenting to explicit and risky health behaviors. The inappropriate sexual content can cause not only more confusion, loss of innocence, but potentially unhealthy relationship expectations and problems in the future. Again, I am not book banning, as some lady just called me before when I came up here. And it's because of the internet and media outlets, I know this stuff is out there. But I don't believe my taxpayer money should fund these books in our school library, nor the child and the young adult sections in the public library system. If need be, use that money for something more necessary. I was not going to read from another book. I was going to read from another book that's in Lincoln and Washington's library. It is not lost, but I have decided not to at this time. The book, All Boys Aren't Blue, includes sexual activity, sexual assault, profanity, derogatory terms, just to name a few of the highlights. I will give you also the proof to that when I'm done. The reason for my decision not to read it aloud at this time is simple. The ball's in your court and the rationale was provided. And for those parents that feel this material is appropriate, I said that just they get their allies together and purchase the materials themselves. They can have family or group reading time at their homes or facilities. Hopefully they can guide and explain the child correctly. But take caution, Wisconsin State Statute 94811 regarding the exposing of a child to harmful descriptions and narratives won't protect them and make them exempt as it does the school and the libraries. A law that really needs to be looked at by our legislators. Thank you again, Superintendent, and the board members that have actually listened. You are doing a great job being fiscally responsible while still addressing and improving the future potential of its youth in our community.
Great job.
Here's the proof.
Thank you. Our next guest is Sydney Cooper.
Yeah, the main thing I'd like to concern is the growing anti-LGBT sentiment I've seen coming from the administration and the school board as not only a parent, but a member of said LGBT community. Throughout the school year, I have seen steps taken to remove rainbows and safe space stickers from our students, making sure they don't know what teachers they can go to when they have problems. Apparently now kids need permission unilaterally from the superintendent when they want to try to change their name with or without their parents' permission. And what constitutes a gender same name? My name could be male or female. Is my name feminine enough? What considers a masculine name? And then to know that we're disbanding groups at a junior high level with no reason given other than what sounds like from a public perspective that it was a group called, what was it, IDEA, that would be a place where kids from marginalized communities, kids from marginalized groups gather and congregate. How are we supposed to empower these kids and unleash their potential if they are hidden and not allowed to express themselves? It sounds like people like me and kids like me want to be hidden. You don't want to see us. You don't want to hear us. You'd rather we go away. We are a controversial topic that you'd rather not be discussed. What's next? I hear thoughts about banning books. Are you going to go through libraries and pretend books featuring people like me don't exist? That queer people don't exist? That kids can't read about it because it's considered morally wrong? Who's going to stop that from happening? We are losing kids by the hundreds. You want kids to come into this district? How is that going to happen when, if someone were to ask me, should you send your kid to the district? I'm like, no. If your kid has any chance of being queer, no, absolutely not. This district is homophobic. You don't welcome kids of marginalized communities. And it's frustrating. I've been scared to death to talk about this, but I'm finally angry enough to bring this up. And no one on any level has reassured me otherwise, that members of this school board, the superintendent, have been anything other than wanting to crush LGBT kids and parents like me. It's frustrating. So I just wanted to take time to finally bring out my voice that my worry is that you'd rather we not exist, and you're taking steps to pretend that gay trans kids are not there. Thank you.
Our next guest is Charlie Russell.
Charlie Russell. I've got two memos from Angela Erdman here. Sorry to pick on you, Angela. The first one is from October 6th. It's in the agenda for tonight's meeting. And it says being in CEP would cost the district $150,000 to $200,000 to be in this year. The second memo is from September 9th. It was presented at the board meeting September 12th. And it says that we lost over $350,000 not being in CEP. And quote, the decrease is due to the district shift from providing meals to all students through CEP. So you mean to tell me we lost $200,000 not feeding every child in the district? Why does Mr. File keep saying the opposite? Mr. File is right, this is an ethical issue, and he's acting unethically, not being a responsible steward of the public's investment. Keep that money in the budget for students' benefit. Use that for education, not trying to keep people from getting free stuff. We are spending almost $2 million to raise test scores in reading through the SFA program. But we're turning down saving $200,000 with CEP, which has been shown through multiple studies to improve test scores in all areas of academics, not just reading, and to reduce classroom disruptive behavior and suspensions. And it was better than free. They were going to pay us $200,000 to take it. Mr. File is putting personal political beliefs before his job, and he's failing us. He didn't consult the board or community, didn't do his research, and now using excuses to try and cover his mistake. He should resign or be terminated. Let's go 4 to 6 weeks without a superintendent. It can't go worse than it is already. Let's conduct a nationwide search for a superintendent that knows what they're doing. Let's get a temp to hire superintendent to turn things around, make it to next year when we're offered CEP. Let's say yes, and thank you for saving us $200,000 instead of spending it trying to keep it from people like me who can afford to pay for my child's lunch. Yes, I'm the problem, it's me. I can do, you're just trying to keep me from being enabled, but you're spending the budget money, $200,000, to teach me a lesson that I've already learned. It's a failure. Thank you for your time.
Next guest is Darlene Wellner.
I'm Darlene Wellner, and 5605 Old County Road Q. I have a long history with school lunch. I was one of the people among a very sizable group in the 70s who was objecting to the fact that the high school was taking out the school lunch program because of the fact that it had to be included in the elementary schools as well. And it faced a curriculum, or not, it faced a referendum, excuse me, and it was defeated. In other words, the people did not want the school lunch expanded to the elementary schools. And the rationale then was that parents are responsible for their children's food, and they could, you know, it was the parents' responsibility. And, you know, it was already when women were in the labor force and working, and there was plenty of poverty and so on. That went on for another the 70s until early 90s. And again, a group of us were very much interested in seeing a school lunch. At that point, we were one of 2 school districts in the state that did not have a lunch program. And the other one was Whitefish Bay, which poverty is probably almost non-existent. And the philosophy on part of many citizens in the community was the same. This is the parents' responsibility. And I know we're a conservative community, but there were so many children who were enduring a great deal of hardship. And I think at that point, the poverty rate was somewhere around 30, maybe a little bit more. And now I think it's somewhere around 48 or something like that. But my career was that of social work in the community. And I worked for human services in various capacities with children who were neglected and in foster care and delinquent and so on. And also with relief programs, this goes back to the 60s and so on. And then later with elderly, and then with the children under the restitution program at Lakeshore Cap. In all these capacities, I saw so many children who were suffering. And, you know, the reasons are varied. I mean, in some cases, the parents just don't have the moxie or the, you know, whatever it takes to have a solid family and so on to be able to put bread on the table on a regular basis. And the children suffered. I really saw a lot of suffering. I placed a lot of children in foster care and you know, saw the really hardships. And so I worked very hard, and with my friend Nancy Randolph, who is here tonight too. And we worked to get a school lunch program. It took several years of trying, and we again had a failed referendum. And I kind of gave up at that point, but I know that others continued, and I'm glad of it, because eventually, the acting superintendent, Steve Gibson, at that time, he put it in place. And thank God for Steve, because that was a wonderful time. And the school board had been opposed to it, but they somehow came around too, under his leadership. And we finally got a school lunch program. That was one of the happiest days of my life. It really was, because I knew how much it meant to, it's, and over the years, I've mentored children, Black children and Vietnamese and all, really, I've been kind of all over the board. And I still do. I'm 83, but I still am doing some of this stuff. It's, I don't know, but sometimes it's hard to pull yourself out of bed. But I came here tonight because I believe so strongly in this. And I don't want to see a disparity in terms of this kid has access to a school lunch, this kid doesn't, this kid fits in this category, this kid fits in this category. I see this as a moral issue, really. God has told us that we should feed the hungry. And I stand by that. I don't know what to say, but I just believe that this was wrong to pull out of this thing. And we need to get back in as fast as we can and value all of our children so they can really become productive members of our society. You can't do it if you're hungry. And I've seen too much hunger, and I know the impact. So God bless you all, and I wish you well, and I hope you will think about this very, very hard. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and our last guest tonight is Jim Heineke.
Yeah, I signed up online.
Good evening, MPSD, school board and staff. Jim Heineke, president of Manitowoc. Well, yes, I'm going to briefly touch on the school lunch topic. There are some items which must be addressed. First, let's look at the incident Friday night. I get it that 100 years is something to celebrate. That does not mean safety can be an afterthought. On Wednesday night, there was a homecoming bonfire which had 3 MPSD maintenance workers present to watch over and deal with should something go wrong. While I'm happy they were there and apparently nothing bad happened, why was the same thought not given to the fireworks display? Furthermore, there were pictures posted on Facebook by the school district pointing out the teeny fire. At that point, I could have put that fire out with my foot, but instead, let's take pictures of it and do nothing. Do you not realize that a fire doubles in size every minute? Surely someone would have dealt with this immediately before it can get too big, right? Nah. Let's take a second picture when the fire was to the point that it would have merely taken a fire extinguisher to put out. Okay, now someone must see this fire and be doing what needs to be done to put it out. Nope. Let's let it grow to the point we need to call the city fire department to put it out. But let's make sure to get a picture of it with no one even attempting to contain it. So there's another unneeded expense. Speaking of expenses, let's back up for a minute. It is very well known that the windows at Lincoln High leak very severely when it rains hard, to the point that water comes into the classrooms that teachers have to take time to clean up. Are you telling me that all these issues are handled and we have enough fund money to get professional fireworks? If that is the case, why did Superintendent File feel the need to basically beg and plead for a referendum from taxpayers? Additionally, has there been any response from Madison regarding Superintendent File, school board member Matt Spalding, and former school board member Colin Burnell making a presentation during their visit to the Capitol? Back when the election took place, Tony Evers was bragging about a $7.1 billion surplus. Even with his recent vetoes, the state budget surplus is still at over $4 billion. Maybe someone could explain exactly where this money came from, and if the district has money for professional fireworks, why did you need to raise my taxes for what appears to be an unnecessary referendum? On a brighter note, I do want to thank Superintendent File for giving an outstanding response to the school lunch issue. Sir, you were exactly right when you said to NBC 26, quote, "I'm almost enabling a parent to not be responsible, and I don't know that that's good. I get it. Everyone is struggling. Bidenomics has everyone by the short hairs. What I am failing to understand is what are these people doing for dinners, food on the weekends, and any days there isn't school? Maybe instead of wasting energy looking to blame someone else, they could be looking for ways to better spend their money. It is a parent's responsibility to feed and nourish their children, not the schools. Also, if any parent believes their income is too low, and I'm taking a guess here, I'm sure Superintendent File and the rest of the school board would suggest filling out and filing the application for free or reduced priced meals. But it is the parent's responsibility to do that work.
I'm sorry, I didn't, the only two online ones are the three that were the ones I gave you. I have one in favor and the other one.
Jenny, come ahead, come forward. You can fill that out, just leave it for us. Yes, she brought one for you too. She'll take it for you here.
You have it already. The names are already. Fill it out and leave it. Just want me to start. Form should be up there. So.
Oh, I do have Jacqueline's. I'm so sorry. I do have it. I don't know why I didn't read that. I must have flipped it too soon. Right. Okay, you bet. Sorry, Jenny, go ahead.
But it was, I just wanted to add, I thought it was interesting that Jean brought up free phones, because during the Ronald Reagan administration, actually, the Lifeline program was started under the FCC, which gives people free phones. So just a fun side note there. Your hero, Ronald Reagan, so you can look that up. There's a lot of things in, where's Jim? Because I really wanted him to hear this.
Probably went to the restroom, not sure.
Okay, well, I'll wait.
Yeah, exactly, after two times.
Well, I think we should put that on pause, because I feel like he should be here to hear this.
You can make your comments to Jim at any point in time.
Jacqueline, do you want to come forward?
Speak to the board.
I really need, it's important that he be here to hear this, so. What's that? Wait.
I can wait to until she's done.
Okay. Okay.
Just wait. Obviously, restroom break is more important, but you know.
I would assume so. I mean, to be honest with you, it's they're not here to speak to the superintendent. The superintendent has an open door policy, you can talk to him at any point in time.
Jenny, I'm going to ask that you say your comments or step down.
Okay, well, Jim can watch the recording later. Oh, here he comes, perfect, great timing, and he's turning away. I'm imagining that he doesn't want to be here to hear this. So there's a lot of things in life that we don't plan on. You know, like some of us don't plan on our kids becoming convicted felons, or we didn't plan on a pandemic, but there were some PPP loans to help some of us out right there. About 13 or so years ago, I didn't plan on becoming a single mom, but I did.
wasn't in my plan, but I was working part-time and I needed some help. And so very reluctantly, I applied for assistance and got some help with healthcare, a little help with food. It didn't cover everything, but I was working. And I got help with childcare so I could go to work. And as soon as I got offered full-time hours, I immediately jumped at that because I wanted to work full-time and I wanted to have my own insurance and I didn't want to rely on other people. In fact, I never told anybody about any of this because I was so ashamed of this. I didn't even tell my boyfriend, like no one knew about this, all right? It's all right, so I was expecting I'm gonna lose my assistance. So the one thing that I really still needed help with was childcare. And this is for all of you who are sitting here in front of me who have obviously never struggled a day in your life, all right? But I tell you why I got cut off. I knew I was gonna lose my health care. Food share was like $28 a month, that was gone. But I really need help with childcare. I got cut off of childcare assistance because I made, listen up, pay attention, $7 too much every month. Okay? That was when I had an epiphany. I'm like, this is why people don't try. Like, and it didn't stop me from trying. Like, I've gone back to school, I've furthered my education, I'm a successful professional. I haven't relied on any kind of assistance. My child has never gotten a free lunch. I've always provided the needs for my child, but not everybody can do that. And it's so ignorant for this person who knows nothing about our community to come here and say, you're teaching parents a lesson? You're not teaching anybody anything. Do you know that our foster care numbers have tripled since COVID? Mostly due to drug abuse and neglect. That's a fact. Do you think somebody who's strung out on drugs has the capacity to fill out forms? You're an embarrassment, and we all should demand your resignation. Here's my paper. Jacqueline Dram.
MPSD Board of Directors, my name is Jacqueline Dram, and I am a sophomore at Lincoln High School. The decision Superintendent File made to end federal funding that gave free breakfast and lunch to all students was a huge mistake and needs to be corrected. When I heard the news at the beginning of the year, I was angry and confused. But as the school year goes on, I witnessed the effects. It becomes more and more upsetting. Have any of you ever visited the school cafeterias? Have you seen the kids that I see every day who don't have proper hygiene for reasons that could be financial, home life, or mental health? I feel bad for them because they don't smell good and wear the same dirty clothes every day. Some kids have no friends to sit with. On top of all that, now they don't have any food. Do you know how hard it is to look around the cafeteria and think that kid just wanted some lunch today? It is heartbreaking being in that lunch line with students who have food in hand but don't have enough money. The cafeteria worker literally throws the food in the garbage can. The kid is embarrassed, the worker feels bad, and I feel helpless. The other day, I decided to look in the garbage can next to the register, and it was full of food taken from students who didn't have the funds. Multiple pieces of pizza without one bite taken, boxed lunches still perfectly boxed up, full cups of ice cream. It was sickening for so many reasons, but mostly because my peers are being shown that the garbage can deserves the food more than they do. Do you want kids to start digging in the garbage for their food? We are told to be kind to others, talk to the kid that sits alone, and help one another. There is no way I can pay for the kid in front of me every time, or share my food with everyone. You had access to the money that could have eliminated this problem and you threw it away. After lunch, we all go back to class. Maybe we even have a test that day. I'm feeling bad for the kids who I know are still hungry, but I can't even imagine how much harder it is for them. There shouldn't be an application to receive kindness. Thank you.
Rebecca Walensky.
You're on now.
I just have to pull something up here. Okay, as you know, I'm Rebecca Walensky. Most of you probably know I started a petition requesting that Jim File resign his position as superintendent on the board. 587 signatures as of 5 minutes ago. Gone up by 100 people a day every day since I started it. It's gonna stay open until you resign. Hopefully that's today, but maybe not, we'll see. The reason is obvious. I mean, everybody has already stated the reason, but I'll just give a couple of points here. I don't want to take up too much time. So in the petition that I have on change.org, if anyone would like to sign it, Jim File, is that pronounced right? File? MPSD superintendent unilaterally decided to turn down federal funding that would allow all MPSD students to have access to free breakfast and lunch. No one's talking about the breakfast no one's getting anymore. You can't get it anymore. You do not get a free breakfast, no matter how many forms you fill out. What about those students? They're not getting anything until lunch. So that's another point. You want 90 minutes of reading in the morning with no meal in your tummy. I don't think anyone's learning anything on that. The breakfast is gone with CEP. That's gone now. Jim File is about to give his points on why he decided to get rid of CEP, and one of them is because there's no time for breakfast because of Success for All. He's also going to say there's no money to pay people to serve breakfast because of Success for All. That's insane. We had free breakfast and you didn't have to pay people to hand it out. It's your decision to do Success for All, so now we can't feed people because of it. That's very sad, disgusting. This federal program, CEP, was paid for by taxpayers' funds that have already been collected, allocated, and this would have had no additional cost to Manitowoc taxpayers. 47% of students in our community qualify for free and reduced meals. Others are very close and struggling, as we've heard. Turning down this program results in hungry kids, shaming kids, lower test scores, and continuing struggle for food insecure families. Do you think that a teenager, 16, 17, 18-year-old, is going to eat the paper bake sun butter sandwich you offer him, or is he going to go hungry and not tell you? He's not going to eat that. The people will know he's the poor kid. What about the little 5-year-old who gets the paper bag lunch instead of the hot lunch and the kids tease him? That's totally okay though. We're all right with that. Why can't we give them a hot lunch just like everybody else gets? Why do they have to be distinguished as the poor kid lunch? It's shaming children. It's disgusting. We shouldn't be doing that. If we're going to give them a free lunch, then give them a free lunch like everybody else. So that's one of my main points. I understand you're trying to say it's the same as it was before. It's the same. The way it was before wasn't equal, and it's not going to be equal because you have this option for people who have no money, and it calls them out in front of everybody. It's like the scarlet letter in the lunchroom. The guy with the paper bag is the poor kid, and we all know that. So they're not going to ask for that. Kids don't want that. They don't want to be singled out and pointed out as the poor kid. So there will be hungry kids, even if their parents filled it out, even if they have no money in their account, anything, you can offer them that. They're not going to take that because everybody will know. And I know I wouldn't take it. I wouldn't want anyone to know my parents didn't pay my lunch account. I would probably leave at lunch or go outside or sit in my car if I was a teenager. And if I was a little kid, I'd probably go cry and go back to my teacher's office where she would have to feed me because that's who's feeding the kids now, the teachers. Not you guys. Turning down this program results in all that happening. The money we as taxpayers have already contributed into this fund will now benefit another community other than ours, and ours will suffer. And we've already paid for it, somebody else to eat the meals. That's sad. Superintendent, you lied on several media platforms stating that this will save us money, which is false, and that we can use the saved money to pay teachers, which we all know is false. He did not consult you, the board, before this or prior to this decision. And for these reasons, he has shown he's not acting in the best interests of our children or our community. So we, 587 signed people and counting, demand your resignation today because you are not acting in the best interest of this community. You are following a Republican agenda. And on that note, I'll bring up Matt asking the Republican Party to come tonight and support him at a public school board meeting, which is not supposed to be partisan. This email was sent this week, Tuesday, October 10th, 6 p.m., the district office at Lindbergh Drive, Manitowoc. Matthew Spalding, MPSD School Board Vice President, seeks support for Superintendent Jim File and the board for their decisions regarding the lunch program. He's encouraging you to speak at the public comment section. That was sent out by the Republican Party of Manitowoc County. Why is it okay for a special interest group to come and support you, but you're not allowing Ally to donate money to underprivileged children in the school because we're labeled a special interest group? But it's all right for the Republican Party to advertise for you and advocate for your decisions. That is wrong. This is not a partisan group. And you're following Project 2025 to the letter. And you don't think we know that, we could read. 2025, everyone, look it up. Matt, you also said, you people, as in left-wing hacks, that will disagree with anything we do. No one chose to accept grant money, not to accept grant money. That grant money was done with even last year. We paid it out of our own pocket. What don't you get? That is untrue. That is totally wrong, and it shows how inept Matt is and doesn't understand the CEP program whatsoever. It's not that we paid for that grant money already. You're wrong, and you know you're wrong. And I'm not a left-wing hack because I disagree with you. You don't need to bring politics into any of this. This is about children, not about politics. Tony, you had said, the solution of free food for everyone forever sure has a socialist communist theme to it and is the exact opposite of what we should teach our kids. We want them to work and be productive adults when they get older, not condition them to rely on the government for basic necessities. Whether they need help or not, this is the wrong message. Yeah, that little 5-year-old who's starving, sorry kid, you gotta learn a lesson. Just to clarify, Matt, you said everybody's going to be fed. Calm down, folks. That was another kind of belittling statement. So I have these all printed out, all the quotes from NBC 26 that Jim File made, especially the one about, I'm almost enabling a parent not to be responsible, and I don't know that that's good. When I made this petition, and people started signing, one of the first signatures on the petition was a woman, I'm not gonna name her name, who made a comment on the website about how she had breast cancer last year and she lost her job. And her husband was working and taking her to Sheboygan for her chemotherapy appointments and her treatments, and she was seeing doctors in Milwaukee, and they had no money because they had such incredible amount of doctor bills and hospital bills, and she was sick and not feeling well and not able to make the lunches for her kids. And she was so grateful for the CEP program because she did not qualify for free lunch because her husband's income was too high. What do you think would happen to that mom this year? Her children would go hungry, or they'd be shamed, or Jim File would call her an irresponsible parent because she got cancer.
Yeah.
So we demand your resignation, 587 of us and counting, and we'll keep demanding it. I'm gonna hand this to you guys because it's all stuff that I talked about.
Thank you.
Yeah, really.
Okay.
All of them from
Oh, you're
Manitowoc.
so-
We're gonna move on in our agenda to the consent agenda.
Little kids.
Is there anything in the consent agenda right now that anyone wants taken out? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda, motion by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Need a first and second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, anyway.
You'll
To accept
okay,
the
Chris is
consent
moving.
I'll second.
By Stevens. Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Okay, any opposed? Thank you. Okay, and then we're gonna move into the report of the superintendent, and the first item is the third Friday enrollment. Angela.
Okay, so included in board book was the memo for third Friday enrollment. As referenced in the budget hearing as well, we are continued to face declining enrollment, so that's just something that we will continue to work through as a district. We've talked about sending out a survey to parents, and we will be doing that in the next 2 to 3 weeks to start getting feedback from families regarding why they're making the choices in the schools. It's a similar survey that we ran at the end of the pandemic, so. I can take any questions if you have any of them. I think it's definitely one piece is that there's the whole harmless provision does help us smoothing out of the enrollment changes, which is helpful. But we're gonna definitely have to work strategically to manage the amount of open enrollment costs that we have as a district, because that, has stayed pretty steady and it's increased a little bit over time. It goes in waves. But then, we will continue to face these challenges. Okay.
Well, my question is that, are we doing anything to try to increase enrollment? We are losing students. What are we doing to try to get that to go the other way? You said there was a survey or something. What was on that survey reasons people left?
Excuse me. The time that we ran the survey was when we were coming out of the pandemic to see why people were choosing at the time, and so I don't have more recent data.
So we didn't do anything last year or after?
No.
I would think that would be something we should be looking at,
Yeah.
and then come up with programs to try to help people understand the good stuff that goes on here.
Mhm.
Because we're losing more than we're gaining,
Yes.
and I thought we were working on fixing that, to be honest, and we're not. Thank you.
Chris.
I just want to clarify, not just for me, but for anybody else that's listening. When you talk about open enrollment, there's really 2 kinds of open enrollment. There's open enrollment into the district,
Yes.
and there's open enrollment out of the district.
Mhm.
And our problem is the open enrollment out
Correct,
is
yes.
what's
Mhm.
creating some pretty
Yes.
phenomenal.
Yes, so around $2 million that we have annually that we pay out for open enrollment. So we have 107 students currently as our third Friday count that open enroll in. So part of the surveying will be, why are you coming to our district? Why are you choosing? A lot of things that the last time we did an open enrollment survey for the out portion, there's a variety of reasons, and we'll always have some level of open enrollment. But it could be parents have ties to a district that's close to employment, or, we don't have like FFA program here where like another rural districts would have stuff like that. So, there are many factors that influence it, and some are out of our control. I think one of the main things that happened during the pandemic, it definitely spiked at that time. I'm trying to recall where, we went up to 389 students out at that time. So it is good to see that it's come down substantially over time, but it's still, our net loss is still large, and we need to be concerned about that. So we're the only district in the state that, or not in the state, excuse me, definitely not the only district in the state, in our county that has, maybe short of Reidsville, that has a net negative for the open enrollment. So it's something we have to work on, so.
I do want to point out, you see that, I don't want to single out a private school, but you see First German has started a choice funded school now, and that enrollment has gone up, obviously. So that could be a contributing factor of why enrollment's going over to that school, obviously, which we showed in the data through what we just presented about an hour ago. So that does factor in some of the count. Would that?
In the count itself, correct. So like, we have our head count, which we call our butts and seats, okay? So it's not really a great way to describe it, but then we have our students that come in from other districts that are, are in our seats, but we don't receive any we do receive funding through open enrollment, but when we do the pupil count, we have to subtract some because we receive that revenue separately. And the open enrollment out does not include the voucher students. So getting a firm count on how many MPSD students are truly lost to vouchers, you know, we can look into as well. It's hard with the parochial schools because they draw from many different areas and we get limited information from the parochial schools and we get some for title funding and that kind of stuff. But, you know, so we do have some information, but it's hard to draw 100% accurate on that. So, but with the open enrollment in and out, that is, you know, it's easy to get it confused between the vouchers and open enrollment itself. So the vouchers are not a part of the open enrollment numbers.
I just wanted to say or ask Angela, have our 4K numbers since we opened the day school, has that increased?
They went down, I believe, if I'm remembering right, get the number here. So for 4K last year we had 248 and we went down to 238 this fall.
Okay.
So, and they're a weighted funding, so like just for 4K, we have some students that are, 2 sections that are full day. We still only receive a 0.6 funding for those students. But when we went to the full day program, we made other adjustments where like we discontinued our Head Start contract with the 4K portion of what they were doing in the district. And so that offset the cost to make that change. So.
And then just the other thing I was gonna say, just in response to Biff, I think one of the things that we are doing is we know that, you know, our education scores are down. And as school choice gets bigger and bigger and bigger, we have to perform better. And so I think one of the things that we are, you know, working on with the Success for All is to get our scores up so that we are the chosen school.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
I wish that it wasn't true, but if you look at scores all across the state, all across the country, based on how we were described as a district in crisis, the whole nation was in crisis during COVID. And what happened? So check the scores of those schools that you just talked about, and they are not better than ours in all instances, even at where we are. So hopefully those scores go up this year. But my thought is they're going to go up across the country and across the state, regardless of it's Houghton Mifflin, FSA, whatever. So let's not just blame this as we tend to do here. We make excuses. We have to find ways to say, this is a good district, come back here. Choose us instead of choosing. I had a conversation this week at 4K. Manitowoc people sending their kids to Reedsville. Why? Because that's their choice right now, because they feel it's a better program. We have to go after those people. We have to say, come here, we're better. We've got an orchestra here. Nobody around us has one. We have Rising Phoenix here. We have all these great programs. We got to go out and get those people and bring them back. And to be honest, I'm tired of the talk. I'm tired of just, oh yeah, we're gonna do this, and it doesn't get done, and our numbers go down, and our district shrinks. We've got to change that, but we have to stop making excuses. Our scores are down, the country is down, the state of Wisconsin is down. So let's look at that.
Okay.
Because that's important. Everybody is down, and we have to find a way. Hopefully this program works. We have to find a way that our scores are going to go up as well as everybody else's.
Okay. Well, I just want to say, though, that you're also making, you know, Angela's very clear that enrollment is down everywhere as well. So again, I think you're right. We have a lot of things to attract our schools, but why are
every district
going?
is down, Stacy. Not every district is shrinking.
Is that the trend, Angela, across the state, that enrollment is down at public schools?
For general enrollments, yes. For open enrollment, net negative. You know, I mean, so that's, yeah.
Anybody else? Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think it's gonna take some time, right? I mean, I don't think anyone said it's gonna happen overnight, but I'm encouraged just by the school visits I've seen and just some of the positive feedback I've had with staff. And, you know, they've even said to me, multiple staff members, that they've seen the kids getting better. And so we should celebrate that, and we should stay focused on why we're doing this.
Okay. Anything else on the third Friday enrollment? Okay. The next is the student learning update. And I think, Jamie, you're going to present that as.
Opportunities for students. If you, next month, I believe it is, it will be on the agenda to show what we're doing at the middle school level with tech ed. That is going to be a huge success. We have, I give all the credit to the young man that we've hired and his vision and the ability to get out of the way and let him create a program that is going to be, or that's already started to show some real promise. And that's happening at Wilson. While the investment is also at Washington, we will be finding someone to staff that. So things that we are working on, and keeping in mind that comparables for state scores and local scores absolutely have to happen. So I can hear your educator voice in that, and I agree with you. So for the student learning, one of the things that I am excited about is, one, to be able to be here with you tonight, even if it is remote. Thank you for tolerating my absence. It was very difficult to not be part of the implementation of SFA at the degree that I had hoped to be. So thank you for that. And we're going to start today this presentation with focusing on academics and some of those scores. So Katie, if you could go to the next slide. What you'll see here are trend lines, and those trend lines started from 2020, because if you'll notice, we didn't give forward in 2019-20 to have a score. And you'll see for Manitowoc, we do have a slight increase. We had implemented a new program. Our percent of increase was 6.5%. While it was small, and when I say small, it's because of the attention that we gave to math. I would have expected to see more of an increase. If you look over at the state score, so that comparable, the state actually increased 7.5. Again, it's not a huge difference, probably something that I would say is negligible when you're looking at the data, but the state increased 1% more than what we did at Manitowoc. So in essence, you could say we kind of lost ground there. You can see that our scores are below the state average. And what we will be doing is we'll be watching our math program. We have gotten some feedback from our middle school and high school teachers that some of our foundation skills are not as solidly in place as what they would like, what they need to build on. So this is an area that we are currently watching and will be monitoring. Okay, next slide, Katie. This is the forward score that you'll see for ELA. In Manitowoc, we're pretty much a flat line, and you can see that. And the state isn't a lot better. They've increased about, if my glasses are serving me right, they've increased about 7%, less than that 6%, while we've decreased 3. So it is something that I think we really had to address. And I think everyone was in agreement with we needed a new program, a curriculum that was aligned, a curriculum that had a scope and sequence. And we have started to implement that now. And that is the Success for All reading portion. On the next slide, what I want to show you is something that we're taking a look at. This is called benchmark data. It is a report that is a K-8 summary report. You see that red line? Everything on the right of the red line shows students who are reading on grade level and where they're receiving their instruction. On the left of the line, students have been placed in instructional groups that are below grade level. And if you go all the way over to the right, you'll see the percent of students who are currently being instructed on grade level. Our goal is going to be to move as many students as we are able to, as quickly as we are able to, over that red line, so that we can be addressing their grade level needs in small groups. Okay, this will be one of the measures we will be using to see, are we making a difference? Okay, next slide, Katie. Okay, and this is the 6-8, so it's the same thing. Keep going, Katie, sorry. Okay, so before you start, Heidi, I want to talk a little bit about the growth cycle, and we call that plan, do, check, adjust. We know when we are implementing any type of curriculum or any type of school reform model, it is hard. It's hard to roll it out. It's hard to make sure that you have all of the materials you need. And it's especially hard for our teaching staff. So it's something that we have to be aware of, and we have to continually check in on them to see how is it going, and be able at central office to adjust everything that we can to remove any barriers possible for our educators. So this is what we've done so far, and I'm not going to take Heidi's thunder. So Heidi, can I turn that over to you to talk about some of the adjustments we've made so far?
Do you want me to talk about professional development first?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So just a little overview of what we have done so far this year. We shifted some of our professional development days that we would typically have during the school year to during the summer, to really give teachers a chance to be prepared to hit the school year up and running. We had 3 full PD days. The first week of in-service, all staff were trained on the getting along together portion of SFA. Again, that's about student culture and behavior, and some of the social and emotional needs of students are met there. We also had the reading component trainings for teachers that are actually teaching the reading blocks. And then we had some coaching visits during that time. A leadership kickoff where our leadership teams from every building got together with SFA facilitators. And they were, I should say SFA coaches, sorry. And they supported us in really being clear about our goals for the year. Since then, we've had every school has had coaching visits with our SFA coaches coming in from out of town, spending time with the facilitator and the principal, and then also visiting classrooms, giving teachers feedback, giving teachers time to ask questions as they're getting things up and running. We actually have our coaches coming to 4K on Thursday of this week to do that work in 4K as well. So that's actually been really exciting. In addition to coming, they also give us a really great feedback form that we get to see kind of what they accomplished at each school. Coming up this Friday's PD day, we have tutor training for anyone who's doing tutoring, SFA tutoring for our students. And that's not just for our littles, but for our middle school students as well. So 2 different tutor trainings that will be happening on Friday. So that's where we're at with our PD. Our coaches are coming back to visit our schools throughout the school year. And one of the things that I've been so impressed with is that they are almost available 24/7 to our facilitators. They have cell phones. They're able to text them when they have questions. They're very responsive. The support has been incredible. So some of the things that we have done
to problem solve just as things have come up. We did have one school that had a little bit higher sizes than we would have liked in our SFA groups. And they shared a reading teacher, so we were able to shift that reading teacher to be teaching SFA at that other school, and that will really help that school. We had another of our elementaries that had higher sizes than we would have liked. And we have posted a position to have someone just for that SFA time to be a reading teacher. In the very beginning days, we had some connectivity issues, but our tech team was super responsive and got all of those things worked out. Jamie's meeting with our facilitators regularly, one-on-one, and our leadership team is supporting the facilitators when they're having their regular weekly meetings. So those are some of the things that have been happening.
All right, I can jump in, Jamie, if you're ready for me, unless there was anything that you'd like to add.
No, please do.
Okay. So if you remember last year, as we were having conversations about, potentially implementing Success for All, there were many questions about special education. And there were many unknowns, and we had teams that were, as they were conducting site visits, continuing to just wonder what SFA and special education look like. And what I will tell you is that we still have many questions. It's a different program delivery model. So on this slide, you can see that there are some comparisons to how more traditional, typical literacy curriculum that we've implemented in the past has operated, and then some Success for All comparisons. What I will tell you is that at IEPs, IDEA is a federally mandated program. IEPs and all that comes with special education is extremely legal. There are legally binding programs, policies, guidelines, all of the things. And what our teachers are doing right now is working incredibly diligently to make sure that all of our IEPs are implemented with fidelity, and that any conversations that are happening in regard to programming is happening as part of an IEP team, which includes parents as stakeholders, administration, any member of that IEP team. So as we are learning and as we are asking questions, our IEPs are being implemented with fidelity, and our teachers are working incredibly hard to learn a new curriculum and make sure that our students' unique individualized needs are being met. So I'd just like to give them all a shout out. So some just very easy comparisons are that in the past, last year, our students were engaged in a literacy curriculum where there was a large group instructional component. Students were receiving instruction at grade level. So a student with a disability, or some of our other students, because we know that there's some proficiency issues in regard to grade level proficiency, would receive general instruction at their grade level. And then they would break up, and I'm simplifying, they would break up into groups, and then the teacher would be responsible for individualizing and differentiating smaller group or individualized target instruction for the remainder of that literacy time. What's different about Success for All is that Success for All is instruction at students' instructional level. So text, skills, instruction happening at the student's instructional level. So the differentiation happens on a larger scale, and students are receiving that instruction even if they are below grade level. They're having access to materials at their instructional level. So the goal, because we're based assessed at the state level on grade level proficiency, is then to move those students who are below grade level quickly and efficiently to get to a point where they have the skill proficiency to access grade level curriculum. And there are systems in place through SFA to move students that are below grade level at a quicker pace to get to that grade level proficiency, because right now they're accessing instructional material at their instructional level. So what we're learning now is that our approach to special education just might need to look a little different, and we need to have those conversations as we assess student progress and we utilize that data to inform our practices, is that there may not need to be as great of a need to pull students out for additional specially designed instruction, because they are having access to the instructional level skills and materials at their level. So we might not need to pull them out to do that. Some of the additional remedial skills, because that's part of their general curriculum now, and they're having access to that. That's a pretty great celebration in and of itself. Now, student with a disability, go ahead. Sorry, Matt.
Can I ask, because it's kind of like right at the point where I wanted to ask, and you're addressing this, and it sounds like we're trying to come up with answers for all this, so it's really good. How about those specific students that have that reading IEP, but their specific need, whether they're autistic or whatnot, they require a one-on-one?
Well, we have few students that require a one-on-one aid. Most of that is because of a medical need or a significant need. We always want to be able to remove a human person and teach skills and strategies that allow students to access. But again, all IEPs are being implemented with fidelity. So students need breaks. If they have support written in those IEPs, those needs are being met.
Right. So I guess the incident that I'm talking about right now is like if they have a reading IEP and they absolutely, because of who they are and their learning disabilities, they require some one-on-one teaching. They're doing that extra half an hour of reading after they've already done a 90-minute block of reading, and they're being pulled from a different class to address that another. So now they're doing 2 hours worth of reading. Is there any way that I know we're working on all this, and so that's the whole point. So, well, I guess what I'm saying, isn't there a way that they could like cut that first part for that specific student down to 60, and then like the last half an hour of it? I mean, I'm just trying to. I don't know, and I know we're all learning, but I really wanted to address the situation.
I appreciate that, because this is really not that different than what we've done in the past. It just, I think, because a student now, because our literacy block is 90 minutes, it feels like a lot. But what I will say is it's 90 minutes at their instructional level. And even in the past, a student who had a reading disability would participate to the greatest extent possible, because as it says at the top of that, all of our students are general education students first. The priority is having students having access to their peers and instruction in the general education classroom. So even in the past, they've participated in, let's say it was a 50-minute literacy block. And then because it's so important that they receive that instruction and supports in the classroom and not be pulled from that, we would pull them during like a tutoring time or an intervention time, or potentially the last couple of minutes of a different course to receive their specially designed instruction. So that practice is the same. It's not ideal, but our other students will also have opportunities and access to tutoring. So we have general education students that are not at grade level right now either. Those students will enter into a tutoring program, because again, the goal is to get our students to grade level proficiency as quickly as possible. So they will also, during an intervention block, have additional reading time to promote literacy. So we always try to avoid a few things in pulling out and pull out services for students. We try to avoid missing core instruction in like the most important, like literacy and math. We really, really, really try to avoid pulling students for specially designed instruction during those core instructional pieces. We don't want to pull kids from recess. We don't want to pull kids from specials. Luckily, we have some intervention tutoring time built into our schedules now, so that makes for students to not have to miss really preferred things to receive some additional support. And unfortunately, when we have students that need some above and beyond, we do need to pull them sometimes from less ideal times in the day.
First of all, I would like to say, me and you, we'd be screaming this at the rooftops that we're educating special ed needs or IEPs in general education setting because we're meeting the students where they're at. So I would love to scream that. I think others would like to too. So that's amazing and awesome for the students' experience at the general ed setting. I'm very happy to see that being implemented. Now, because of the state reporting and how they're reporting on grade level, do we have a mechanism in place, or I'm asking, could we have a mechanism in place to show the growth of special ed students so that we can report that, hey, Johnny went up, 5 sections, so that we can report the growth, so that we don't just look at the state and say, hey, Johnny's way behind, but we can report on the growth to us so that we are knowing that, hey, he has learned a lot in this time frame. And so I'm asking, we need to have a mechanism in place that we can prove that there's improvement on the growth side of that students with an IEP. Do we have a mechanism in place right now?
Yep, so that's part of our SFA quarterly data collection will include all of our students with disabilities.
The growth.
Yeah, the growth. So
Okay.
it'll be internal success for all growth. We'll also have Fast Bridge that right now is our first Fast Bridge assessment window, so all students are being assessed to garner a baseline.
Sounds like SFAs.
Yeah, and then, so, and if you recall, our focus too is to close that achievement gap.
I
and to focus.
understand.
So you're exactly right, that's a focus of ours, is to look at specific to students with disabilities, that achievement growth. And we know that, students wouldn't be students with disabilities if all of them, if they were at grade level proficiency, so.
Could I interject? Because I did work with you. Do you remember me?
I do remember.
And you are correct that we were working very hard to keep those kids in class, in math, in reading. And then if you had strategies for those kids built up, some people in your school objected to those things and they did not let those kids be the kids they needed to be. That's all I have to say. And I was doing that for 16 years, so I know.
Thank you,
Matt,
Barbara.
Matt, I would like to address your comment as well.
Jamie,
We will-
just 1 second. I just want to remind the audience that can't take comments back and forth.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
But
I
no, but I
haven't been
appreciate
in
it. That's okay. Thanks,
10
Barbara.
years.
Okay, Jamie, go ahead.
So SFA does have a mechanism that we will be measuring all students, including those who are students with disabilities. And then we have Fast Bridge on top of that. And the reason that we have both is because we want a nationally normed measure that is outside of the curriculum so that we can see how are we performing against a national norm. And here's the downside of it. Right now, that is what is causing some of the stress for our teaching staff because they were already working late at night, trying to make sure that they were ready to go. And as all of you know, most educators are perfectionists and we are paced people. We like to know things in advance and we need to be prepared. Throwing the Fast Bridge in because we did not have a nationally normed assessment K-12 is a hurdle that we're climbing over right now, knowing that it won't be perfect right away, and we're okay with that, but it is causing some stress. So,
Thank you, Jamie, for answering that.
Any other questions?
Heidi and Lee, there were concerns from teachers about SFA groups getting bigger than 20. Is that part of what you were talking about, trying to hire somebody or find somebody? Because I think we were told 10 would be the max, and all of a sudden I know of 2 groups that were over 20.
We are definitely looking at the numbers that are getting higher and addressing it, yes.
And there was and I was told this would never happen here, but one of the groups, when they were in either Ohio or Kansas, there was a 4th grade student in a 1st grade classroom. And I was told that that would not happen. Well, it happened here. And has that been addressed, or are we trying to fix that? I just don't know if that's a good thing to have a 4th grader sitting with 1st graders.
If you don't mind maybe talking with me after, Beth, about where that's happening, then you
Okay.
can maybe talk about
Okay,
that
I
a
will
little
do
bit
that.
more.
And do you know anything about federally funded reading teachers being asked to teach SFA groups?
Well, we worked really hard to do the calculations and figure out that, 80%, our title teachers are being paid 80% out of our title budget and 20% out of the general fund, so that during that 20% of their time that they're teaching SFA, they are not being paid with title dollars.
Okay, and somebody explained that to some of them.
Well, okay. Yes.
Thank you.
What's the target class size? Was it, you mentioned 10, but I thought it was 20. Is that, or is there
Remember
a target?
10. I don't remember 10 ever.
SFA group recommendations are 20 to 24 range.
Okay.
And that's what they recommend.
But also, we also know that the lower students that are the most struggling learners, we do have smaller sizes for those kids. So even with our roots groups, where our goal is to keep the roots groups smaller, the wings groups, when we were visiting, did get higher. And the higher, more functioning the group is, the larger the size was, so that we could have those lower sizes for the more struggling learners.
And you know, it's interesting you mentioned that, because that's exactly what I observed when I was at Jefferson last week. And it was, you know, again, the feedback I got from the staff there was it seemed like the kids were really getting it. And they all actually thought it was, the ones I talked to thought it was good to have the kids by group, because then they wouldn't get lost, you know, being in a classroom where they might not quite be getting it yet, but it still gives them an opportunity to grow. So it's good to hear that we're making progress.
It is accurate that there were 3 groups that were above 20. And that's the addition of the 0.3 teacher that we're looking for. That will address 2 of the groups. And then the 3rd group, we have a parapro in the room. So even though it's not a certified teacher, there is another set of hands in there.
I also just want to throw out that one of the things that we've heard from the coaches, and it makes sense when you think about it, is this is our first round of groupings, and they're gonna shift. Kids are gonna move to different groups. So to see where it settles, like that, we don't expect for there to be large groups of kids overall.
I visited elementary school and I heard nothing but positive things about the SFA implementation. They've had some challenges, we'll call them, but overall, the interaction has been really good. As so much as there was a CISA individual asking for more information of the curriculum because they liked it so much. So just, I heard good things. I asked for bad things, I heard good things. So thank you. I understand it's not easy.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. And just know that we will be back to give you those quarterly reports so that you can also watch where the students are moving.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, and now we're going to do the CEP update.
I provided information, you know, in your packet that explained. We have the clicker. So I provided information in your packet on a number of different sources, including, you know, an explanation.
You want these handed out, Jim?
Oh, yes, would you please? So I also have hard copies because we didn't have these in the packet. I'm gonna wait till Lori distributes some of this. Lori. You know, so again, I had some information in the packet that identified, you know, in terms of the background behind the decision. I also have identified a couple of things that we also done. One was we sent out another notification to parents, to the extent of making sure that parents who are aware that there's this program that's available to them, in terms of qualifying for free and reduced lunch. We are making sure that our principals are aware of it. We've also given the authority to principals in terms of if there is a need, we will cover the expense of somebody who is needing a free and reduced. And so that was kind of explained in the packet. But I wanted to provide a little bit more context here with a little bit of presentation. I have my slide presentation that I've handed out, as well as some information, background information in terms of some articles in the paper that you might find beneficial. But starting this, I don't typically share personal information, but there seems to be some assessment of me as though I've never experienced this. A staple in our household, blue-collar family, in terms of my dad was a union painter. He was an abusive alcoholic father. My mother was a waitress. I've always felt provided for and never thought I was poor. Even though we didn't get food stamps, we got containers of peanut butter and lard, and so that was a staple off and on, depending on when my dad was laid off. My wife has survived breast cancer. We thought we were going to lose her during the period of time. I recall, I don't recall because I was too young, but my mother, would come after double shift and pick me up out of the bar, sleeping on pool tables with my brother. I remember on Saturdays on the way to go fishing, never getting past the bar. And so the whole Saturday was spent in the bar. So I recognize some of the challenges with families, but I always felt cared and loved, and I never felt poor. And I always felt, I would have to say, in terms of people who were instrumental besides my mother, was my coach, who expected more, and teachers. Not teachers who felt sorry for me, but teachers who expected more because they knew I could do more. But they helped me also. I had a couple of things where I made a couple of mistakes. I was able to, I was only suspended, not expelled. Learned the lessons that maybe I couldn't play football anymore because of that. Went on to play college football. So it was because of caring people in my life, besides my mother, that enabled me to be here where I'm at right now. So there's much more to that. Some I can't share, but sometimes you can't judge a book by a cover. So you have to really be careful. So I just share that in terms of when some of these statements are made. I'd also say that I do feel from the day one of challenges starting from an internal staff member who's no longer, challenging SFA, making reference to it as a dinosaur, and building support in terms of resisting this, when I was just working to recommend it be located in 2 sites. And I think everybody recognized the more we learned, the more we sent some of our teachers out to our sites and to come back. They came back with such positive information, influenced the board to a decision ultimately that we didn't go with 2 schools. We went with 8 schools. And that's where we're at right now. And I would say, while there's still some resistance and some naysayers, I can understand that because reform is very difficult. But I do feel it's an uphill battle. I do also believe that while it's a distraction and slows us down because we have to take time to address this, it's also provided that opportunity. If we hadn't been challenged, we might only have 2 schools with SFA, but now we have 8. And so I truly believe we have a decision. Now, putting some context in terms of my decision here with the community eligibility provision, and I shared with you that I had the authority to make that, as I make many decisions in a $90 million operation. First of all, I have here on this cover that MPSD, there is a cost to operate. And when I say there is a cost, the funding source for that is the federal government. The federal government money isn't there. It's then balanced out of general fund, just like we're increasingly underwriting the cost of special education because that need has to be met. It's an unfunded mandate, but we have to serve that with priority. And so therefore we reduce general fund services or we ask for more referendum. So it's a system that's totally linked. The bottom line here, it comes back down to we need to understand the needs of every child. It's almost like an IEP. And you have to be careful that you don't pride and probe, or you don't assume that they're poor, that they're not capable. We do though need to have an understanding. Again, another reason for SFA, what we didn't have in the system, even though we had caring people, we never had a system to start looking at this. We now have solution teams with every school. So not only academics we are addressing, we're addressing also issues in terms of, is the family and parents involved? Do we know enough about what's happening? Attendance, kids aren't coming to school. Why? Is it because of parents working double shift? What do we need to know? So we are, in fact, finally doing something after 7 years of neglecting our parents and students in this community. 70% of kids not reading at grade level is a crisis. And I said it before, and I'm ready to move on because we have a plan, but I'll continue to come back and reinforce that to make sure that people remember why we're doing this, why we selected SFA, why we needed more than just a reading program, because there are so many areas we neglected. I would also say, along with what Biff said, we've got some really highlights. But the bottom line is the orchestra, and this is one thing I love, from having the ability to work in Traverse City with 10,000 students, large geographic area in terms of what we are doing for at-risk and in offering a comprehensive system that many school districts couldn't touch. That's really great. But I've also talked with businesses who are wanting to set up apprenticeships in the trades, and we're just really making a lot of headway. But it was really interesting. One of the builders there that was in part of this committee was talking about how his kid can't do math, and it's needed in the trades. So we really haven't provided as much we have to build a foundation. So these kids are more than equipped, to succeed in a number of different areas, but they will win out other people in terms of being able to secure employment or seeing other opportunities. So with the cost, it's really important here to understand we have about $1.7 million in the food service fund. We've had a large fund balance for over 3 to 4 years. You can only use this money for what the feds say you can in food service. Okay, so you cannot use this to buy more teachers. What my concern is the federal government's making this decision. We move from local control to federal control. And so much of the decisions in terms of understanding that we used to have locally is now removed from us. And it's difficult to understand and we don't influence. I will also say though, before going through this a little bit more, there are funds that potentially those funds could be used for. For example, and I'm not suggesting we would go there, but I've heard from day one that our cafeteria at Lincoln High School is not acceptable. It's not meeting our needs. It's too small. We're having to do extra programming. These funds could be used for that and offset taxpayer money here locally. So it is not spending quick because there's money. It's making a thoughtful decision in terms of what are all our needs, how do we prioritize them with academics at the start. I've heard a lot of stories about kids who are hungry and can't afford, are not getting fed. I don't see how that's happening. I heard 47%, 57% of our students qualify for either free or reduced. I also know we have a breakfast program at some of our schools where the percentage that are eligible, I don't know. Or maybe they're dropping them off for daycare. Or maybe it's people who can afford coming in and buying. We still don't have the data that we'd like to have, but with SFA and what we're doing for solutions, we definitely want our parents more involved, and we are going to pursue that to get them engaged. So I share that if you go on to the next slide, if I can figure out how to do this, you can do that for me, it can be much better. So I said there is a cost, okay? Now again, our source of our cost is federal funds because we do have reserves. But free for all doesn't mean that we aren't paying. They're just discounted so high. They're saying they're enticing you, take this money, take this money. It's free. It's not free. We do have reserves. We built reserves up over 4 years. Okay, now Angela has mentioned a very important factor, and that is that the guidelines suggest you should only have three months of operations. It's almost similar to what they recommend for fund balance and general fund is at least 3 months of operation. It's just kind of account. It's not meant to be a savings account. It's meant to be a spending account. Okay. However, it's identifying what your needs are, and to start spending money because it's available without really sound justification smacks me in the face in terms of, as I was identified in terms of what I did to talk people in to help support the millage, the referendum, it only passed 52 to 48. So there are a lot of people who are questioning whether or not we have too much or whether or not we're spending it wisely. For me not to take this position smacks, where I speak out of both sides of my mouth. And so I'm trying to be consistent. I've also looked at the strategic plan, that has stakeholder engagement in not only student services and academics and behavior, but it was also in terms of being good stewards of public funds. And so I felt everything was aligned with the direction that the board had given me and then supported by the strategic plan. So I share that. So what I just wanted to do, these are just generalized numbers so you get a good sense that you can understand how this works. Right now, Angela's identifying, it's just an estimate, and it was even cited by somebody, that we have approximately $150,000 to $200,000 that would have cost us for this program if we would have implemented. Now, Angela's identified that there's other counties that are not accepting it, and that's unfortunate, in terms of going back to free and reduced and what that might mean. But again, I think it's being honest to taxpayers, both that, our taxpayers who are paying federal and state. But the $200,000, we have approximately 2,000 students who are qualified to be able to pay. Okay. And so I just wanted to have you being aware, of this in terms of that's the amount that we would underwrite this program, but we'd use federal funds to it, and to exhaust it, then we start using general fund and competing with other priorities. Okay. What I just want people to understand is it's not that we can use these funds for it. It comes back down to the feds making decisions instead of local decisions. $200,000 is equivalent to 2 teachers. So for example, the federal government's decision here, if we needed more teachers to ramp up and catch up on the reading growth, we could sure use those teachers. And it would sure be good if the federal government was giving us money to spend where we need it, where it's priority and where it works for this community. So that's just providing some context. Next slide. So there's just no question that there are students who don't qualify, but there's extenuating circumstances. I identified one. My folks, even though my mother as a waitress made really good money, when she died, they had to open up an extra room because all her customers came to give their regards. So I can get a little emotional about this too. So I understand extenuating circumstances and people who reached out to help. But we have to distinguish from those who can and those who truly can't. And there is an extenuating area. That's when I went out of the way, because I recognized we never had a system even to look for this, except for a caring teacher. But because systems weren't there, they did more out of their own pocket instead of finding out what the school or the community could do. So I shared that with you. Going to the next slide. Let's say there's 10%. That fall into this extenuating circumstances. And we just talked about 200,000. I'm just trying to put this in perspective of what we would have to pay. The cost is actually more, because this is only how much we would pay that the government isn't paying. Remember, they're going to pay portion. This is what's left for us to pay. Okay. So there is more. But I'm just trying to say money means something here. 10% of 2,000 students is 200 students. That costs us $20,000. That could save taxpayers at the federal state level $180,000 and be spent where it's needed, like in fully funding special education. Next slide. So again, and so the heading of this is that it's not our cost. The money that we receive is federal, local. There is money that we're making a la carte. That money goes in here, but we still can't spend it because the feds still control, that. So while we make some profit, it just goes into the pot, and we have to follow federal guidelines. So really my point here is federal versus local, and it's part of my issue. Unfortunately, most people in public entities, schools in particular, are known to be budget maximizers, meaning it's always more budget, more taxes. That they're striving for, because that's, they just have more money to spend. They can plan more things. They can do more things. Unlike a business who is looking in terms of, you have to make a profit or you go out of business. unfortunately, we don't look that way sometimes when we're looking at public funds. We're spending somebody else's money. It gets at the federal level, you don't even pay attention to it because you don't understand it. So it comes down to when somebody's making decisions versus local decisions, it's free meals or 2 teachers. It's just an example. Moving over to the next sheet. The federal government budget, you have some articles on this. The federal government budget right now is $6.3 trillion. The funding source, 4.8 from taxes and fees. And then we borrow 1.5 trillion so that we can give out free food and other things. We are spending beyond our needs, and so we have to borrow for that. So then every year we're just like credit cards. You know, you get maxed out and all of a sudden you're limited in what else you can spend because you're spending all your money on paying the interest. It is a concern to me, you know, in terms of making sure that we're transparent with taxpayers. And so it comes down again to that district need. Is it food for non-qualified or teachers, smaller class size where the federal should be spending money? Yeah, they've already made the rules and we have to abide by it, and it's so removed we don't even understand it. So if we are just looking at our total budget, okay, our total budget last year for food service was $3.2 million. Now, granted, some of this is COVID and we're probably spending more. Going back to 50% approximately, so you can help understand, if 50% was for that we were taking care of these kids, and 50% where they would have to pay, just that 50% on the federal money, you know, that has to support this, either directly or indirectly where we pick up the difference, equates to 16.5 teachers. But maybe 50% is too, because you can't, it's just like a classroom. We have a school that loses student population. It could be spread out through the whole school. It doesn't mean you eliminate a teacher. Okay, yeah, so there's things to recognize. If this were only 25%, meaning that's still 8.25 teachers instead of free meals, meaning we're only one school district. But we need to also start influencing the federal government where they're spending our money. And I truly believe that we've lost control locally. And we're just taking funds with, it doesn't matter, it just seems like free money. It's not free money, we're borrowing for that, and we're paying more in the long run versus prioritizing our needs. So it's just additional information. So I'm not sure if you have any questions, but you know, essentially that's what supports my decision. I gave you a rationale why it was my decision. You know, in terms of my authority, we discussed this at a board meeting. I felt pretty strongly in terms of where the board's at. Now that might be different with new board members coming on, you know, in terms of what started and in this whole issue with taxes, you know, in terms of how we discussed. But that's just the information I'm providing you to understand this program.
Okay, I'm sure everyone has, or if you have something to say, I'm just gonna go around, Matt.
Angela, how does the free and reduced program work right now? Can you explain it for a student?
Yeah, so from a qualification standpoint, so all.
Just a process.
Okay, so families have to pay for meals, and then if they qualify for free and reduced lunch, they can fill out an income eligibility form, and then their price is adjusted that they have to pay for when they pay for their meals.
Was there a mailer sent out before the school year if they were qualified for free and reduced lunch?
Correct. We sent out extensive communication, especially with the change, and then also a notification in June.
Yes, I did hear about that before the school year. Okay, sorry, interrupt.
Yeah.
Continue.
No, and we've sent out subsequent communications to help support the change.
Okay, how hard is the form to fill out?
It's not difficult to fill out. It's mainly, I filled out for myself just to test it as a parent myself, the online one on Infinite Campus. It's mainly the children's names, number of dependents in your household, your income of everyone. You know,
they provide a W-2 or IRS form?
You don't unless you are selected for the verification. We do have to do a certain, like a sampling of verifications, but it's general basic income information.
So it's on or unless you get audited, kind of, just for the parental side? it's honored,
Yes.
honor system.
Mhm.
Give your-
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to
Yes.
say.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
you give your income information, you submit it to the Manitowoc Public School District at Lindbergh Drive or at school or before school online or
All of those.
all those are
They
options?
can turn them in here, they can turn it at the schools, they can get assistance with any of the translation support, like filling out the form, at any of the school locations.
Okay. How did those, did you get a good response or I don't know. How did that work?
Getting into the school year, it was a huge response because it'd been so long since we had done this process. So, the last time they had to fill out, well, truly last year when we were CEP, the alternate income form was the form that everyone had to fill out. But really the years before that, it was supposed to be that people still filled it out. Even though meals were free, because it was the vehicle to have any fees waived. So you had to fill that out in order to get to step 2 where you could have fees waived. The information and data collected from the forms is very important for like our title funding that is used. So it's always been very important, even during the pandemic when we were doing CEP last year and partial CEP in the district before then, that we get that information from parents.
So is it just a parent's signature on the bottom?
Yeah, yes, I believe so. Maybe.
My family members
information as
signed my
well.
parents' names many times.
Huh?
I said my family members signed my parents' names many times because they weren't all the time, so I'll admit to that, that's fine. But so you're saying it's a signature from a guardian?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's an audit process if needed or randomly it happens?
Yes, they're randomly selected by Infinite Campus. They have a system, and then they also run that direct cert system that will capture any families that are under any of the food share, SNAP benefits like that. And I did learn after the last meeting, because I understood that if you're in that, you automatically pull in, and I would say that in some cases, there are small instances where that doesn't happen, but either way, we send out, when a family submits an application, they receive a letter from us that says, if it was approved or denied. And then we also include the information for the second step that says, if you need your fees waived, fill out this form.
Is there any way we can make it easier, or do you think it's pretty easy in your opinion?
I think it's pretty easy in its form right now. I think it's just an adjustment because we were out of practice doing it. And so going back to this system for any district that's gone back to, whether it's been, any districts in the state that didn't go to like a CEP, had to revert back to this since the pandemic. So it's been an adjustment for all. It's a federal, form that we have. We don't get to really make and drive the information that we collect on it.
That's all I have for now.
Okay, Tony.
So any kid that needs free or reduced lunch right now can get it, is that correct?
If they filled out the form.
Okay. What if they don't fill out the form?
And if they come up to the line, any student is served. I shouldn't say like no one, if someone comes up to lunch line and, they are served an alternate meal if they don't have money in their account.
Okay, so just to clarify then, some of the
Yes.
comments that were made earlier, it sounded like some kids were not able to get food, but if I'm hearing you right, that's not the case. Is that-
We would never leave a child without the ability to eat.
Okay. And, just looking at walking away from the CEP program and the cost of the district, I've seen a lot of numbers floating around out there, and I think we need to talk about that. Can you help me understand the impact to the district overall?
Right now, shifting back to their free reduced paid model, we're in a transition year very much, and we've changed not only going from CEP to free paid and reduced, but we've also changed the service model where students used to receive at the elementary and middle schools breakfast in the classroom. And so there was a much higher volume where hundreds of students were eating or having breakfast made available to them, and we're no longer providing that. So that adds to the impact, and it's hard to separate all of that out sometimes, the individual impacts. When the budget was put together this year, a 75% reduction in the amount of students eating breakfast was used in the calculation and a slight reduction in lunch. We used, I worked with our food service director and said, can you give projections and numbers based on what the percentage was of students eating breakfast pre-pandemic? So, so that's what we had to use to give our best bet or our best guess at the time. So we had to, in Chartwell's they looked at their staffing at the time as well, and they reduced hours of their staff. So our cost, I mean, you can see overall in the budget, our expenditures are $500,000 lower. I mean, part of that is food costs, but part of that's, our staffing costs for Chartwell's that are paid in that respect. So it's a matter of volume in a lot of ways, because there are less students eating and you still have a pretty consistent level of overhead from a staffing standpoint. In addition, we had to add staffing, and that is being paid through Fund 10 to supervise breakfast, because it used to be just a part of the school day where you already have your staff in place. So if, so if kids have special needs or support they need during breakfast, that was already kind of in kind of what was already in place when they were doing that in the classrooms. But with the need to just preserve as much instructional time as possible, it was decided that we were going to move to putting that into the cafeteria gym, so that was a huge impact. So students and families do have to come before school if they're interested in lunch. So everyone has still access to lunch, but it's not during the regular standard thing.
And Angela made a significant point there, because, the decision was the recognition in terms of our kids needing more reading times, and not to have a teacher consume with also that breakfast, type of a thing. So it was making sure when kids are there, they're ready to, to be engaged, in terms of their classroom work.
And
It's my turn.
my
Did you
turn.
go?
I didn't go yet. Unless you're not done yet.
Yeah, I'm not finished quite
I
yet.
didn't think
So I've heard a lot of talk about, from a few different people that I've spoken to about this, about a gray area of students, right? And so this is an area where, they may not qualify for free and reduced lunches, but for whatever reason, they're not able to come to school with a lunch or afford a lunch during lunchtime. How are we handling that? And is that something that we could accomplish with the old system?
Let me address that, Tony.
I'll ask you my question.
What we did here, and we just did this, in terms of as we're trying to find out, the government can say, I can give you more money for kids that don't need it, but you can't. But having said that, we've authorized, our principals are authorized, if they see students who don't qualify, but they feel that there's a recognized need, we're going to make sure that they're given a free meal. Even though, as Angela mentioned, they're already available to, we're not turning anyway hungry, but
The regular meal? Because the difference between it was the
a regular meal.
bag one.
And so, let me clarify also, we should keep the conversation within the.
Sorry.
I lost the interruption, I'm sorry.
No,
I'll
go
come
ahead.
back. No, I can come back.
Talking about the kids in the gray area and
Right.
the distinction between.
Yeah, so anyway, so principals are authorized to do that, and, to the extent that if they're not, and you can see, 57% of kids could get free and reduced. And I identified just by an example, if there is another 10%, we'll work to cover that cost. I can't use federal dollars for that. I mean, it's like we can use vending machines and make money, that could be meaningful and could be beneficial for kids. But if it's in the proximity of the food service rooms, we can't use that. So they are calling rules that don't necessarily help us, with that flexibility.
And I think Jim, you raise a good point, because first off, I'd like to clarify, despite all the chatter out there, everyone that I've talked to, I think is aligned that we want to help all the kids that need it, right? So no one's stated otherwise. I haven't seen or heard otherwise from anyone that I've talked to. So I just want to put that out there first. But, second, when you look at the issue, not every child needs this, right? And that's the reality. So, I think when you're talking about being responsible stewards of our tax dollars, and we're potentially funding, 1,500 to 2,000 meals a day that don't need it. And in the meantime, we have legitimate deficits in other area in our district, such as special ed, as you pointed out. I think that warrants a serious conversation. We should really look at that system and talk about, how do we, and if there's not much we can do about it locally, I'm open to suggestions, but I think we really need to question that and advocate for being responsible with our tax dollars and making sure that we're using them efficiently.
I did include some articles that, there's so much, first of all, there's a great deal of waste in the food service. There's a lot of research about it, always has been. So it's not because we are throwing food away. Now, we might be oversupplying, and haven't adjusted, but a lot of kids, because to count that student, our food service people recognize if they don't take all the component parts, they don't get credit to count that student. Therefore, some of that can end up right in the trash. Because we are in compliance mode, the only way we claim that money is making sure that these kids keep this balanced meal. There's other research out there that the feds are now finally correcting it. But before, to cut costs, there was a lot of processed food, and many attribute the free lunch program to the obesity in our states. Even though there's an attempt, and now it's being changed, where they're trying to figure out how to remove all that processed food, the sugar, but there's, we have to understand that at the federal government, there's a lot of people who are making money off of selling their products, and so there's a lot of lobbying going on. So there's a lot, we assume that we understand this, because on the surface, who would ever think that they would hurt a child? Which couldn't be further from the truth. But who's going to hurt the taxpayer who is living by retirement check to retirement check, and then all of a sudden somebody's saying, oh, we got to increase it a little bit more because we need it over here more than there. And that's where I feel it is a moral issue to everybody.
Matthew?
Yeah, address a couple of things. I originally and still am in the frame of mind that it's my responsibility to feed my child. I can't afford it either. It's $3.65 a day, and it doesn't sound much, but boy, when you add it up over the year, it comes to be about $675 a year on top of us raising our taxes and things like that. And I just don't make that kind of money. So, but either way, I still think it's my responsibility to feed my kid, not any of y'all's. However, one of our students came up here today and had the fortitude to speak, Ms. Jacqueline Dram, and she had mentioned something where kids were getting food and getting in line, and then if they didn't have the funds to pay for it, it went in the garbage. I can't handle that. That's one of the most upsetting things I've heard so far. So I'd like to know, how do we stop that? What are you doing to stop that? And I understand that some people may think that, I know there was we addressed the fact that they were going to get a free meal, and they said it's because it's the brown bag, but I don't think they understand that you've changed something recently.
Well, that's another point, just needs clarification.
Please.
We're not talking about the kids who qualify for free and reduced getting brown bags. We're talking about parents who aren't putting money into their account.
Correct.
After reminders after reminders. So that, now again, there could be extenuating circumstances from some kids, and we need to look out for it. So that's an important point, and there
is that still being done right now with the brown bag thing?
Well, first of all, Angela might have, the brown bag is kind of a story that's floating around, that there was something maybe at the initial start of the school year when they were trying to get something launched. I think I heard brown bags, but Angela's conveyed to me, and again, we haven't had time to verify every single thing, but Angela, I believe you conveyed to me there is no brown bag. They get a tray. It's different what's on the tray, so they get a tray. Again, the reference to the girl speaking, our student at the high school, dumping food in, I mean, I would be, well, first of all, we have restrictions, even though we're looking in terms of, can we give some of the unused food away to pantries and people who need it? Okay, and I'm not sure that we totally explored that, but I don't know, I would imagine the food service people are trying to be as close to accurate as they can, so there's no waste, coming down, so they just wouldn't throw food away.
I need to check into that, and I'll definitely follow up on that. And
One of the big things in the complaints, and I guess I understand that.
I do
I'm
know
on the fence with all
that,
this.
I do know that students are dumping it because they don't want to eat some of it.
Well, right, this is another thing too, is that I know last year when it was covered and when it's covered through COVID, we had more waste of food than we've ever seen. So the waste has gone down, no matter what anybody can say, without having it, because kids are just taking it and then throwing it away. They had to take the fruit, whatever. My point is, one of the biggest concerns is, and I can see that nobody's gonna want, hey, he's got the brown bag, nobody wants to do that. Now, even if they do get a hot tray, but, everybody else is getting pizza, but you're getting a bag, you know what I mean? We need to cut that out if we're gonna do that, if you're gonna now, you had said that the principals have the authority. I've also read that you've given the food service people the authority and the teachers in the area. I don't really know.
The principals, we haven't worked out exactly how, but they have, if they have a recognized need, and we believe that we will work with our principals and they'll be very responsible here to clearly, they have rationale to do that. Sometimes it might be difficult to exactly have that, but they can just tell the student needs something, and I've got to provide them the latitude. But they would always be looking above that 50%, is there another 10% that might need something?
Right.
But is it 1%, 2%? I use 10% as an example.
And it's the whole thing of them, when they get to the end of the line, if they don't have the funds for it, for whatever reason, if it's thrown in the garbage, I'd probably flip the lid if I see that. That's just my own opinion though.
Pip?
That might be a health department thing. I mean, imagine being at a restaurant
if you
and
touch
taking
it.
food, you put it on your tray, you can't go back and.
Yeah, but then give it to the kid, is what I'm saying.
I
Then give it to the
agree
kid.
with that.
I can't see
But that is something that's happening in cafeterias where the food is getting thrown in the garbage.
Yeah, I can't.
I don't know that they're putting food on the tray and then the worker is throwing it away.
If they don't have the
If
funds,
they don't have the
according to
funds,
what
they can't take the tray of food, and that's when they get.
the student that's in and out of there.
Okay.
and then come to the registry, which is,
So again, my process that I've been associated before, we've done that up front. Kids give their cards before they go through the line.
I don't believe in all that. I really don't. I believe that it's my job to feed my kid. And it's everybody else's job to feed their own kid. But if a child comes up and has food and they're.
Let me also
That's
just
something I can't
clarify,
do.
the card, nobody can distinguish the card that was made as a public comment. Nobody can distinguish who's getting a card that is paid for from governmental funds.
No, that's true.
Or who is getting paid because their parents put money in the
That I
account.
know, yes.
the other piece I do need to insert though really quickly that is challenging is you could reverse the flow of the line and have everyone check out first, but then if they get à la carte items and
Yeah,
get
they
other
don't.
items, then how do you catch them? I mean, and that's, it's, I'll definitely look into this and address this with our food service without a doubt.
Yes. I just don't.
But and the students that get the sun butter sandwiches are able to still go to the salad bar and get all of that. So they do have, it's not just that they get like nothing, it's just, we do have to make a decision as a district, and we could say if they have no money, they're gonna still get the meal and still just feed them, but then at what point?
I agree.
So there's a lot of
I agree.
pieces to this.
I can't, the whole thing about the,
Okay, I have
That's
some
what-
other
that's where I'm
things to
going
add
with
for clarification, but after, if I can. Okay.
So they put the sun butter sandwich on a tray, so that's the badge that lets people know that they can't get food. And that's wrong.
But Biff, that is just a question, that's not the free and reduced. Please
It
understand. that.
doesn't matter who it is.
That's okay, I'm just.
If you have a tray and there's a sandwich,
just
you're
distinct-
marked that day by
I'm
the
just
other kids in the
distinguishing
cafeteria.
It's not the free and reduced, which, that's been.
Okay,
that
couple
association
things.
made.
Couple things, because I have questions, and thank you for letting us know, because there was confusion on whether we voted to do this or not, but that was your decision. So now that's out there and people understand that. How, I need to know this. It'd be a lot easier if we had a finance committee and could talk about this and get stuff, but how does the free lunch program affect our ability for special ed and paying teacher salaries? And one of the speakers tonight she already said the 2 shows that you made that comment. One was a Be My Guest show where you said, well, if we do this, we can't pay teachers. I don't know, I listened to it this morning, Jim. And the other one was, I believe it was the NBC report where you blamed special ed on this because of cost. And I'm sick and tired of special ed being the program we keep blaming for money problems. So how does this affect special ed is what I want to know.
I didn't hear blame. I didn't hear blame.
You can't do this special ed because of this.
Ask Jim, so let's have Jim answer if he wants to.
You know, first of all, I always knew that you can't use food service money to just pay for staffing. I had an issue with the federal government in terms of making decisions in terms of where that money is being spent and how terms it's prioritized. And that's what I presented to you today. Now, whether or not I wasn't totally clear on a radio spot, I accept responsibility for that. There was no way identified to mislead people, but to identify, you know, there is no free lunch, meaning taxpayers are paying for this. And that was, you know, that was the point. And I was also making the reference, we have needs that aren't being met. Special education is an unfunded mandate because it's important, because my child who was reading impaired got significant service from preschool through school. I understand the importance and I worship speech and hearing teachers because what they did to help my students succeed because he had a special need. So I am not beaten up on special education. It is a fact that the federal government and state are not paying that service, which they should.
How is that related to food CEP program? I agree, we're not getting the money we should. They said at one time 42%, that hasn't happened. How does not taking this program affect special ed?
It doesn't.
Well, exactly, but you said that twice to the public, once on a TV station, once on a radio show.
Again, I've always known, and so if I somehow misstated something, it wasn't to mislead people, because I totally understand that you cannot use food service money to pay for staff.
Okay, moving on. You've been here 2 years, correct?
Not total.
Okay.
A year.
The comment you made earlier was we started saving food service money 4 years ago. So that was something good that the prior people did. Time out. Hey,
I'm trying to
I am
clarify
asking the question. I'm asking the question, okay? You made a comment for the last 7 years. It's been a crisis here and it's been a problem and we're changing that. I take offense to that because I worked here 7 years ago and it wasn't bad.
We didn't have a reading problem?
Were you here 7 years ago?
We didn't have a reading.
Were you here 7 years ago?
No.
No. So how would you know what the district was like? You weren't here, but you make that judgment and you say, oh, it's been bad for 7 years and now we have to change it. And Jim, you've got to be here.
How does this go with CEP?
How does this go with CEP? Yes. It's the fact that we have to just be honest and tell people the truth rather than saying what we want to say. Oh, we don't have special ed because we're getting government food money.
You just clarified that and you're grandstanding right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Anything else?
I heard what you said and I didn't get that out of it.
Well, that's what.
I mean, he's just suggesting the government's inefficient and it sounds like you're arguing otherwise. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm arguing wise. Well, I will argue this. We've already paid that in taxes. So now it's pretty inefficient not to use that since we already gave it to them. If you want to change that, let's vote those guys out. But right now you paid that in taxes and you're saying we don't want it.
Well, I think we got to talk about that.
Well, exactly. But the money that we were taxed, we're not going to get that back. So it's going to go to North Carolina, South Carolina, who knows who'll get it. But it won't be the people that paid the taxes and put it in the system. But moving on, question. So I like, Matt, what you were talking about in the cafeteria, because there is a problem in the caf with freshman girls going into tears at Lincoln because lunch trays are taken away. That happened. Teachers paying lunches for kids around the district. Those problems are there. That has to be fixed. Giving a sun butter sandwich does not work. So I'm glad we're working on that. That's all I'm going to say now.
Chris?
I don't have any questions, but I do have a few comments.
Okay.
First, I want to say that I'm both delighted and saddened by all of you today. Delighted to see people turning out for their government. Saddened that you're turning out when procedurally it's too late to change this for this year. This was a poorly made decision that has diminished public trust in the MPSD and in our decision-making process. It is absolutely and undeniably a policy decision. And policies ought to be made by the board. The superintendent certainly can recommend. The superintendent certainly should advise and inform. But policy ought finally be made by the board in deference to the electorate. An action like this, an action of this kind of weight and clear public interest should be publicly decided by the people they elect and with notification that lets them know it's going to happen well in advance. You know, one of the founding concepts of this country is that taxation without representation is tyranny. And to not decide this as the publicly elected members is literally denying the public their representation. Now, I believe we owe it to our students, our parents, and our taxpayers to publicly decide rather than have to explain what happened after the fact. So, to me, it's sad for everyone here tonight. I wish you were here to share your expectations rather than your frustration, your disappointment, your support, your amazement. What you're sharing now can't change where we are this year. But you certainly all have my promise that I will work to make sure that before the CEP deadline passes for 24-25, it will be on an agenda so that the board will make a decision that you can inform them of what you'd like to see them decide. Thank you.
I'd like to move on from this if we could, because we're not going to vote on anything today, and I feel like everyone has said what they needed to say, unless it's.
I have no stump speech, but thank you, Jim. Sorry for the public shaming. I am in agreement with you. Publicly, I'll say it. Everything you articulated about local government taking care of local business, I agree with 100%. I thank you for giving the sovereignty to the principals to make discretions for their facilities. And I'm sorry that you had to bring up personal stories. I can give up personal stories too, but this isn't a wailing wall for me. Thank you.
I would just clarify that there is policy that supported my making that decision, and I included that in the
Yes.
packet.
Yes, you did. It's completely in your purview. And
I totally agree with policy directing me.
Correct. Okay, so let's move on to the district activity update. Anything you wanted to add with the activities?
Hold on a second.
This thing is so convoluted and can't figure out where we're at.
Just that, you know, a couple of things. You have the athletic events this week. I also met recently with the regional legislators and superintendents. In one of the discussions at that table was that Act 20, that's the new reading law. And I would have to say there are some unsettled superintendents here because they feel like they're behind the 8 ball because of what they have to do now to get a literacy program in. Also, our previous curriculum, you know, the Lucy Calkins, Columbia University has let go of the professor. I think she's in a transition, but they stopped supporting that curriculum. You know, just so that you're aware that you're ahead of the game here. And it was in a nice spot to be in terms of feeling like we're already eligible to meet all the criteria for that. Special Education Parent Advisory Group will be meeting for the first time on October 23rd. I'll be following up with PTO, PTA presidents. That date hasn't been set yet. We're trying to find out who the new presidents are and when they're meeting so that we can arrange a time. And I would just tell you that I sit in on the weekly SFA facilitators meeting. What a very strong group, of professionals here and what they're doing to support the teachers. And I would just really recognize they spoke very highly about the commitment of our teachers and what they're doing to upload all these new things, SFA, an assessment system that we haven't had before. So really kudos out to our faculty and that SFA group because they're going all the way to support the teachers. And so just with deep appreciation in terms of that commitment.
And I do.
I don't want to interrupt, but what about D, response to community concern book titles?
Right, I was just getting back to that.
Okay.
I saw the word community and I was thinking it was from the first word community in C. So we're gonna bump back up to D, the response to the community concern about the book titles. And Jamie, you were gonna present on that?
Oh.
I am, thank you. So you received a memo. There were 5 titles that were forwarded as of having concern, and you have the information on if they exist in our libraries or not. What I do want to bring forward is that there is a board policy in regard to complaints or concerns regarding instructional material, and that policy is 9130. There's a misprint in the agenda. It says 93. It should be 9130. What I would like to do is bring that policy to you next meeting as a first read, so that we can make sure that we have a solid policy that you would like to follow, and then put a community group in place to be reviewing any titles that come forward. We'll do a suggested process for that, and then make sure that the board is supportive of the process prior to putting a community group together for review.
Thank you.
I would just add, in terms of I asked, I charged Jamie with following up on this. That's why she was reaching, and I had this supplemental list. One is I've already verified that the book that was read out here was in our catalog, but is missing. And what I have right now is we have a parent and some citizens, who have identified that there's many books that many school districts have looked at that have been questionable, and I'm not making judgment, I'm only saying. And so the question is, okay, I've gotten a list, and I'm just passing it. I'll send you electronic. I just got it today. These are books that are on this questionable list. I have no idea what that means. Obviously the last time that one book was really seen as pornographic, and the question, was, did we have that? We had it, but it's missing. Okay, here are other books. There's a short description. I'll send you electronic file. Just got it today. And what they've done is taken that list, which is this whole list, and they've identified whether or not we have any of these books in our schools and at what schools. And so as you can see, some parents have already, and some citizens have already looked through our public catalog to see if some of these books exist. It's not a judgment. We're trying to figure out we're going back to policy in terms of our procedures, and that's where Jamie has indicated she had some that were referenced. They were checked, with our librarians. Now we had parents who actually did the checking for us. But I'm not suggesting anything at this time. As Jamie mentioned, we're just following up on what was expressed, in terms of did that one book do these other books, list. So.
Okay.
So it's not an action item.
It's going to be next time.
That's what I'm kind of getting at, because
talk about
I
what
would
you
like to
read.
see an action item.
Yeah, well, and if you read
Maybe-
through the policy, there really needs to be a citizens group that's brought together. Is my understanding, right?
Right.
It does, and it needs to be a group that represents the broad spectrum of your community. And it also needs to be a group that has an odd number of voting members.
So you're not going to see action real fast, but we're going to come back to this policy next time and talk about that committee.
Right, just to make sure that we have the appropriate process that the board wants us to follow.
Okay, we don't have any unfinished business. Our new business is we do have some policies for the first read. And we will go through those.
Athletic events. Did you skip that?
Oh, well, it's just athletic events.
That was just an attachment.
It was just an attachment.
Oh, okay.
Just an attachment.
Thank you.
Okay, so our first policy is the school counseling, 2411. And like we've done, I'm just gonna go around and if there's any changes, Chris?
No, thank you.
Biff?
Nope.
I don't have any, Tony?
Good.
Okay, and Matt? Phipps?
Do you have any additions at all? I asked about the student counselor or school
So,
counselor.
yeah, you had talked about like a modeling clause.
Yeah, well, not a clause, just there was room for adding more of the purview of a counselor, and I thought it was completely okay to have the purview include modeling, correct behavior or character development, or, just kind of, it was right in the line, so I asked you if you could draft up something. You sent me an email, but you didn't say anything more than that.
Yeah, I didn't draft anything up just because in terms of in the policy, it uses language around what they're doing with students. So, I mean, we're welcome to add anything we would like, but I wasn't exactly sure how to word that. If we were talking about an adult modeling behavior for students in a policy that really talks about what those adults are gonna be doing to help students grow. So example, in B, it says assist students in achieving their optimum growth. So I would just need a little help of understanding how we'll have the modeling piece get to something that improves something for the student. Like I was missing that part of it, of what you might want.
So I was just in the basis of just having the counselor being a resource that the student uses to draw towards to a positive, role model. That's all I really, because I've seen counselors that are intricately involved in the day-to-day operations of not just the development of the academic, but also the betterment of the students' atmosphere at school. So that's what I was trying to get at, but if you didn't want to write anything extra, that's fine.
I think this specific policy, if I
Sure.
can just interject a bit, is specifically related to academic and career planning and the school counselor's role in supporting that, which is a state mandated ACP is something that our 6th to 12th graders have to do as part of the curriculum. So I think this is talking a little bit more about their role in supporting academic and career planning for students. It does talk about helping students learn to make their own decisions and solve problems independently. Just because I wasn't included in that conversation, is there something that you wish to see specific to modeling? Is that what you're thinking, or?
I made a statement to Mr. Tennis asking if there was any more added character development that could be added to the. I thought it was appropriate in this policy because of what you just said, making their own decisions, becoming problem solvers independently. So I thought it was in the purview of adding character development to it, but it's just, this is our time to do that, I thought. So.
Absolutely. And we have other school counseling policies, so when we would look at those and see if maybe, I think that one might serve a little bit more broader perspective of what our school counselors do in our school buildings, but we can certainly look into that and.
I just haven't seen that one. So,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
So,
I don't know that we got to that one.
thank you.
Okay, so doesn't look like there'll be any changes to that. So do I have a motion and a second to support the first reading?
So moved. Second.
Okay, Chris, second by Biff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll move that on. Any of those with a nay? Okay, we'll move that on to our second read. Our next one is our emergency nursing services, 5310.01. And are there any, Chris, anything changes there? Biff?
No, nothing.
Okay. Yeah. Tony?
Good.
Okay, Matthew?
No.
Okay, so seeing none, I'll have to take a motion in a second for the first read.
I'll move.
Okay, Chris?
Second.
Okay, Tony? All right, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Carries. Okay, then the next one is the 5350, the suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. And this is a replacement policy. Any changes on that one, Chris? Biff?
No.
Matthew?
No.
Tony?
No.
Okay, Matthew? Okay. All those, we take a motion in a second to the first read?
I'll motion that.
Motion, okay, and a second?
Second.
Chris? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Right, any opposed? Okay, and then first reading of 5451, and this is our Wisconsin Academic Excellence Scholarship. Any changes, Chris?
No, thank you.
Biff? The only thing I had was on that second, where it says by February 25th. Toward the end of that, the X of the option we wanted says a number of seniors from each. And I wondered if it should be the other one that just says at the high school, since we don't have multiple high schools.
Well, technically, McKinley.
McKinley,
had it.
okay, is that, okay.
So, yep, statutorily, they're considered a school, so.
Okay.
That's why we marked the each.
So, okay, so then it'll just read from each high school.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. All right. That was all questions I had on that one. Matthew?
Nope.
Tony?
No.
Okay, and Matt? Okay. First and a second on this one?
Motion.
Okay, Tony?
Second.
Okay, Chris?
I got myself.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very similar to the last one, this is 5451.02, the Technical Excellence Higher Education Scholarships. Any changes on that, Chris?
No.
Biff?
Nope.
Matthew?
Yeah, I have a question, Haley. It looks like from the last one, it looks like they're changing it to just junior and senior. Does it look like, does that make sense to you?
That's how it was on the last one.
Is
too.
that how it was? I just wanted to make sure. Okay, that's all I need to know. Yep, no change.
Okay. Tony? Okay. Matt?
No.
Okay. And can I get a first and a second to approve the first reading?
So moved.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay, Tony? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And then we have our search and seizure. This is 5771. Any changes, Chris?
I would have to take a meat cleaver to this one, so I'll just be voting against it.
Okay.
It has a number of things that I'm very unhappy with, and they would never go anywhere, so.
Okay, all right. Biff?
I think I'm okay.
My only, this is just another sort of procedural question about where it says option 1, and then on that next page, it says option 2, they're both marked. Was that just an oversight, or we wanted a provision for parking permit required and parking permit not required?
So there are buildings in our district that don't require parking permits, but there are, that there are some that do.
Okay.
So that's why we,
both of them.
yes.
Okay. Okay. And I think that was my only question on that one. Matthew?
That's good.
Okay. Tony?
Good.
Okay. And Matt? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, sorry, motion and a second. The motion to approve?
Motion.
Okay, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Chris? Okay, and then this would be 5772, which is the weapons policy. And Chris, any-
No, thank you, but I do like this one.
okay, great. Biff?
I'm okay.
Okay. My only question was towards the bottom. Just curious about the theatrical props. I know we wouldn't use like probably a real weapon, but I'm sure. And then also what the knife in food preparation, like what about the high school if they have a knife in the classroom for culinary? You know, I didn't know if that violates this.
May I ask a question? My understanding was because those weren't Xed, those weren't included.
Right, but what my.
In the recommendation, that's correct. But you bring up points. I mean, if we did ever believe that, you know, there could be a play that had or necessary, it's also something I think that you could make the same argument for the knife part too. I think in general, those knives are used in those preparation at both the middle and the high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, it's perhaps one of those where it's not the student's possession and bringing it in.
Okay.
That's the only thing. If the board's more comfortable making it more inclusive, it's certainly an option to check both of those boxes.
All three of those seem like they're appropriate.
Yeah.
You know? I think so.
My interpretation of the differentiation was just that it talks about appropriate settings for C and D. So if the knife were removed from the culinary arts room and the intent was to use it for some other purpose than cutting in foods class, and then that would be covered under B.
Correct.
Same with the theatrical prop. If it was removed from the theater, and then the intention was to use that weapon in some other way than what deemed for theater class, then it would be covered under B. Got it.
Yeah,
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right.
Teamwork.
Anything? Matthew? Okay, Tony?
Nope.
Okay, Matt? Okay. Although, I'm sorry, we need a motion and a second? Okay, Chris?
Second.
Biff? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and that should be all of the ones that we had, and those all move on to our second reading. And then we have just a brief overview of our upcoming ones.
Yeah, we'll just even do by title. So there'll be several more policies up for first reading next time. So a couple of these, just to note, are new policies for the district. So, you know, taking a look at those and weighing in, you know, do we need a policy on these? Are things, these were recommended by Neola. So we have policy 1100 on district organization, policy 1110 on assessment of district goals. That is would be a new one. We have a policy 1130, a ethics and conflict of interest policy. We have policy 1210, board superintendent relationship. Policy 1211, again, this would be a new one without an existing policy, is a whistleblower protection policy. We have 1213, student supervision and welfare. And then we have policy 2260, non-discrimination and access to equal educational opportunity. And then 2260.01, section 504 ADA, prohibition against discrimination based on disability policy. So those will be the ones we'll be working through next time.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I just had a couple just remarks. I did get to visit Franklin this morning, and I got an overview from the facilitator there, the SFA facilitator, just on what she did in order to get the program running in her school. And then I got to go to a couple classrooms and see the program. So I just want to encourage everybody to go out to, you know, our schools and see it in action. Lot of work has gone into that. It's pretty neat to see how organized and just systematic that the coordinators have done. So I'd like to go to some more schools. I know Tony mentioned some too. And then just the other thing, and kind of Jamie had mentioned this earlier, but, just want all of us to continue to remember, I know we do, but to acknowledge when you see our teachers, they want to do it the best and they want to do it right. And so it's causing lots of late night hours and weekend hours. And, I think we really need to encourage that, yes, we want it to go really, really well, but not at the expense of their personal well-being and families and things like that. So, they need to give themselves permission to not be there till 10:30, and that's not something that we expect of them. Jamie doesn't expect that of them. They're working their tushies off. And so just anything that you can do to just acknowledge that it's okay. It is okay to go home. It's okay to put this on the shelf. It's going to be there tomorrow. There are lots of things that are going to be adjusted, as we've already, seen when things come up. And so, just continue to reiterate that they're doing really, really well, and they need to take that time for themselves. Absolutely, okay? I'm not up on all the sports, but I know, Coach Henschel from high school, and she's taken some kids to state this week, so that's really exciting. She's got a great program, and I got to see a couple of the players this year, so they'll be heading out tomorrow, so just keep them in your thoughts. And just keep up on the activities. Only other thing, or just moving along here, would be future meeting dates. And I believe October 24th at 6 p.m. will be our next upcoming meeting. So we'll have that in a couple weeks. And then if there's no objection, we'll just push our closed session to next meeting since it's really late. So unless there's any objection in that, and you guys want to stay here?
No, I'm still here.
I'm good. You're staying?
No, no question.
All right. You guys okay? All right. All right, so that should be it. So I would look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion is second.
Okay, motion is second. Right here. Okay, thank you. Two. All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you all for the discussion and the information, and Angela and everybody that came to talk. Appreciate it.
I'll